Opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
And welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's a beautiful Wednesday, end of June 2012. Can you believe that we're already halfway through the year? I cannot. But we are going to be with you for the next 3 hours live, talking about topics having to do with autism and how you and I can be more efficient and more effective working with our kids on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a practitioner, I know that that's a subject that's really near and dear to your heart. It's certainly near and dear to my heart. We are in particular going to talk about ABA from time to time, applied behavior analysis, because we know it's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. What does that mean for us? What it means is that wherever our children are in the spectrum, we're going to be able to, I'm going to sneeze all day, I'm having an allergy day. We're going to be able to use some tools in different ways for different children to help them to gain the skills that they need to get caught up. Here we go. Excuse me. It's just like such an allergy thing. My eyes are running too. We're going to try not to do that. But in any case, our kids are all different, and they require different things, but we can take the tools of ABA and apply them in different ways to individual children and help those children to gain the progress that they deserve, right? Different outcomes. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, sorry. You know that when it's coming and then it goes away. In any case, it's going to be an interesting day. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride. But we've got some really fascinating things to talk about today. We've got some fascinating people coming in to share with us. So it's guaranteed to be interesting. And I'm going to sneeze all day. Where's the Claritin when you need it, right? In any case, already we're off to a silly start. But I want you to know that as we talk about ABA, because it is such an important topic for us to talk about, and we need to gain the skills, it's that tool belt that I talk about. We got to have the tool belt, and you want to put the different things in the different compartments and know that when you see something going on, that you got to pull out different tools for different situations, right? And you're going to apply the tools, and no two situations are going to be the same. So we want to build your tool belt for you. But I want you to know that for me, I'm like the person who works at the hardware store, not the contractor. Okay? I am not an expert in ABA. I'm not a BCBA. I'm a parent and a former teacher. So I'm here to help you. When you come in and tell me, here's what I need, then I'm going to walk you over to the different departments and introduce you to the experts there and say, here, have a conversation with them. What do you want to ask them? I'll ferry it to them if they're not with us in the moment. So that's what I want to be. I'm your conduit to the experts and to the answers and to more questions and more hope and more help. That's what I want to be for you. My son was diagnosed when he was 2.5 years old. He's 9 now. We had the benefit, you know, what's funny to me is that I thought that I was incredibly late. And by some people's standards, I was incredibly late, because I know some of you are getting your children diagnosed at 18 months. You rock, because we know, we've been talking about this all week long, how important early intervention is. Early intensive behavioral intervention, to be 100% clear. So important for our kids. So, and we were talking yesterday with Sucho about, well, what does early mean? Early means now. So if your child is 18 months, it means right now. If your child is 3, it means right now. If your child is 7, it means right now. If your child is 22, it means right now. It's never too late, right? But we know that the earlier we start, traditionally, the better the outcomes are going to be. But if you have a child who is older, don't let that bog you down, because now is the moment that you want to start. Now is early, wherever you are. But as soon as that could be. And my son was 3 years old. He was 2.5 when he was diagnosed, and he was 3 years old and about 2 weeks after his 3rd birthday, that we were able to start our intensive ABA program, which we got through the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And if it seems like I am a huge fan of theirs, make no mistake, I am. They gave me my child back, so how could I not be? And I got to see how ABA can work with our children to help them to reach their highest potential. And as a parent and as a former teacher, that's what we have to be about as parents, right? I was talking with Sean Colton earlier this week. He's an awesome autism dad and a blogger and the author of the book Legends of the Boo Monster. And he was talking about how he'd been in denial for a while when his child was diagnosed. And he said, but I quickly had to realize this wasn't about me. And he said that, and I was like, wow, you know, I think I'm still working on that, because it feels incredibly personal, doesn't it, when your child gets diagnosed? But it's not about us. However, we have to rise to the occasion, and that way it is about us. We have to rise to the occasion and say, all right, what is available to me? What can I do? How can I show up for this child to help them to reach their highest potential? If that's what you're all about, then you have come to the right place, because that's what we're all about. We want to help you to solve that conundrum. How can I help this child reach their highest potential? Whether they're on the spectrum or not, ABA is an effective tool to help us to get that done. So ask questions is what I'm getting at. There are lots of different ways to get a hold of us here. If you are watching us on autism-live.com, you will see across the top of your screen it says either live or rebroadcast. If it says live, then you have a question box right there. You don't have to log in. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to do a thing. Just start typing. Hit enter, and it's going to show up here on my screen, so I can ask somebody a question. I can run and chase something down. I can call somebody and say, hey, what would you, an expert? And I do have access to those experts on your behalf. If it says rebroadcast, you're not left out in the cold, not at all. It's just a little bit of delayed gratification, probably. We're going to start to flash some different ways that you can get a hold of us on the screen, one of them being email. So feel free to email us, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world, day or night. We will get the email and address your question on the next available live show. We will also send you a typewritten response or a link to the segment in the show where we answered your question. So you don't necessarily have to sit there and watch every single episode to see when are they going to answer my question. We'll let you know when we did, and you can watch the answer. There are other ways to get a hold of us, though, too. You can phone us. We love it when you guys phone into the studio. We can patch you in directly into the studio, or you can talk to somebody outside the studio who's prepared to help you find the answers that you need. You can also Skype into the studio during the live show, and if you have you've got camera on your computer and you're having a good hair day, you can be side by side with me and we can be having a conversation. We've been Skyping with a lot of people. Skyped with a mom blogger in Denmark the other day. Our very first overseas phone call, but we hope it won't be our last. In fact, I'd love to have another one this week. If you're overseas and watching and you are it's conducive in terms of the time change when we're live, give us a call on Skype. We'd love to be chatting with you. But you can also get a hold of us on Facebook. That's a great way to answer the question of the day. Also a great way to monitor what's happening over the weekend. I do check into the Facebook on a fairly regular basis, so if you've got a question, you can pose it there. And you can also tweet with us. We are starting to really love the whole Twitter thing. So tweet away, I guess is what they say. I mentioned that there's lots of different ways that you could watch us, because we have autism-live.com. But we appear in lots of other places as well. You can be watching us right now on blip.tv, and you can fast forward, rewind, you can search a topic, you can subscribe and get all the episodes so that you never miss anything, Blip TV is a wonderful way to watch us, but you can also watch us on our YouTube channel. I love that because sometimes I just want to go back and reference something, a short interview that we did with somebody, so it's really time saving when you use YouTube. And we are also available as a free download on iTunes. We particularly love it if you watch us on iTunes, if you give us a review. That's very reinforcing for us here. And we are also available on Ustream and coming to you in more ways very soon. So stay tuned. And if there's a way that we are not watchable for you currently on some sort of format that you would really like, would you do me a favor and write to us and tell us? Because it may be that we just don't know about it. Because there's a lot we don't know here, right? But we have access to people who do, like you, which is a wonderful thing. Okay. So I like to start every single morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. Jargon of the day is that time of day. I think of it as the warm-up in the morning. This is what we do to get the muscles going and going. Yes, the brain is attached. I'm learning new things that are going to help my child and help me to be able to negotiate these bumpy waters, this journey through autism. So we take one word, one phrase, one anagram a day, and we demystify it. We give you an actual definition so that you can see what the real deal is with it, and then we give you a working definition, something that is less exact, of course, but that will help you to be able to gain access to these terms in relation to your individual child. So this week we've been talking about different terms having to do with when our children get a diagnosis. So, and if you're just tuning in, I'm having an allergy attack, so forgive me. But today, our term is PDD-NOS. Now, there's a lot of talk in our community that this means pediatrician didn't diagnose. That is not what it means. What it actually stands for is pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. That's where you get your PDD-NOS. It is a diagnosis for a person who has atypical, symptomology for autism. Atypical. What is typical? Have we not decided that typical, what is typical? Does it really exist? I think it's a pipe dream. But in any case, let's look at our working definition. An autism spectrum disorder used to describe individuals who do not fully meet the criteria for autistic disorder or Asperger syndrome. So, okay, it's all about to change, right? But it's important for us as parents and teachers and practitioners to understand what the current criteria for diagnosis is. And I got to tell you, when my son was being diagnosed, I was terrified to know what the actual criteria was because I was still floating on that river in Egypt, denial. And hey, denial takes however much time it takes, right? But I didn't really want to know. And then my child was diagnosed, and then I wanted to know. I was like, well, so how? How did he qualify for this? And it's very funny when I talk to parents about what that moment is like when you know you're going in to be evaluated for autism and where your hopes and where your fears are. And everybody is different. I know I went in and I was aware of a PDD-NOS diagnosis, and I was hoping for either that or Asperger's. I'm just being honest here. We went in and I was like, well, I hope we get speech delay, or at the worst we get PDD-NOS, or we get Asperger's, because the connotation for the word autism for me was devastating. And that's what a lot of these things are misconceptions, right? What's interesting to me is that I had another friend who went through it, and she was terrified that she was going to get a PDD-NOS. She was hoping for an Asperger or an autism diagnosis, didn't want to get the PDD-NOS because to her that meant she wasn't going to get funding, which sometimes is the truth. And then I know other people that have gone in and said, I'm hoping for nothing, or I'm hoping for Asperger's. Once the developmental pediatrician said to me, yeah, she had this very thick German accent. I'm not good at German accent, but she was like, yeah, autism. I said, oh, well, are we at least talking about Asperger's? you know, because I was in there in a place of not being informed. She said, oh, no, not Asperger's. And I was sort of at a loss, but I went home to try to figure out, okay, what is the difference between autism, Asperger, and PDD-NOS? And if you can imagine, you know how when you go to a Chinese restaurant and they've got the menu and they say, well, you can, to build your dinner, you can have one from column A, one from column B, and one from column C, or two from column B, or whatever. So it's kind of like that, the current criteria for autism. It's about to change, and in another day we'll go over what the new criteria is. But the current criteria says you've got to have a total of 6 things from 3 different columns to get an autism diagnosis. The 3 columns are a social delay or a social deficit. I'm really going to paraphrase here, right, for the purposes of being understood and making it short. So we have 3 columns: social delay, language delay, and then behaviors that are repetitive or ritualistic, right? Those are your 3 columns. And you got to have 6 symptoms total from these 3 columns, but you must have 2 from the social, 1 from the language, and 1 from the repetitive and ritualistic behaviors in order to qualify. So you could have 8 symptoms totally, but if you didn't have any from the ritualistic behaviors, you wouldn't qualify for autism, but you would qualify for PDD-NOS. And I think this is where a lot of the misunderstanding has come over the years, that people tend to think, oh, well, you didn't qualify for the autism, you have PDD-NOS. That's a lesser form of autism. And I think in the vast majority of the cases, that might be true, but there are those instances where people don't fit into the categories in the right way, and so they don't get the autism diagnosis and get shoved into the PDD-NOS when they very definitely need services and are sometimes disqualified as being not eligible because you didn't fit the criteria. So we're all nervous about this impending change, the DSM-5 that's coming out, but it does take away these different distinctions. We're not going to have PDD-NOS anymore, and we're not going to have Asperger's. We're going to have autism spectrum disorder, and within that, there's a little bit more wiggle room in some areas and a little less in some areas. So people it's going to change how people are diagnosed and who gets diagnosed and who doesn't. For me, my fear, and I think a lot of our fears, are that at least if you had PDD-NOS, there were some things that you could get some help and support, although clearly not as much usually as you could with autism. But in terms of insurance, if you were anywhere in there, you were covered. And I think that a lot of us are concerned that if you don't qualify now, there's no shades of gray, right? If you don't get the diagnosis. Even within the diagnosis, there are shades of gray where they're going to say that you are low, medium, or high in terms of how you're affected. But if you don't make the criteria, then you're going to be shut out of the insurance. And I think a lot of us are concerned about people losing services. That's to come, but PDD-NOS means that you didn't meet the criteria. The 3 columns, a total of 6, with a minimum of 2 from the social, 1 from the language, and 1 from the repetitive and stereotypical behaviors. But not necessarily a lesser version of autism. And I think that needs to be said on a regular basis. Okay, we always have a question of the day for you. And our question of the day is, what has your family had to sacrifice since your child was diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder? What have you had to sacrifice? Because we know that there are things that you give up. You can't do everything in the amount of time that you have anyway in this world, right? And then when your child has a diagnosis and there's time that you have to take out to go and see specialists, money that you have to devote to that, and then you get to treatment, hopefully, and that's 25 to 40 hours more a week on top of everything else. So what has that meant that you have had to sacrifice? I'm guessing that in your case like ours, it was worth it, but I think we need to acknowledge that there are sacrifices, things that you have to give up. My family certainly, we gave up financial security. Bye-bye. Woo! there it went. Tweet, 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 and it's gone. We certainly gave up that, and we're still working on seeing if we can have that come back sometime in the next decade. But if not, still worth it. Keeping a sense of humor about it. Hoo-hoo. And for the longest time, we sacrificed being in a better living situation. That we just recently have been able to rent a house as opposed to a really small apartment. We sacrificed family vacations. We sacrificed seeing people because we did not have the time. We're starting to get back into the swing of that and coming back into the world and going places and seeing things. And it's shocking. I found that the world has changed since I was at home with autism. But it was worth it. It was worth it, worth it, worth it, worth it, worth it. I hope that the sacrifices that your family has made have been worth it for you, or that you're beginning to see how much it is worth it. But I guarantee you that at some point you're going to look back and say, hey, you know, especially if you're seeking out and getting that ABA therapy, you're going to see that it was worth it, not just for your child, but for you and everybody else in the family, even the neurotypical peers. Really and truly, I believe that with every fiber of my being. And so if you don't believe it today, I can believe it for you. Sometimes, you know, we have to let other people go, I know, been there, done that. I'm going to believe it for you while you just deal with the things you got it. So I'm going to believe it for you today. All right. We have a topic of the day always. And our topic of the day has morphed into the topic of the week. And you can probably imagine what our topic is this week. It is starting EIBI. We started the week with our jargon was EIBI. It is Early Intensive Behavioral Intervention. It is so important that we start our kids from the very first possible moment. Now notice that I said possible, because for all of us, our journeys are different, and what we have to face in order to get our kids the therapy, it's different. I don't think it is easy for anyone. I haven't heard a single person say, oh, I just walked in, they gave me the services, it cost me nothing, I didn't have to sacrifice anything. I don't think that story exists. So know that whatever you're going through, there are a big group of us that feel for you, that empathize with you, that although your journey is different, we went through our own version, the seventh ring of hell, to make sure that our kids got it on the first day possible. Forgive yourself that it couldn't have been 2 weeks or 2 years or 20 years earlier. You did what you could on the day that you could when you knew, right? Isn't that what they say? When we knew better, we did better. So if you're watching today, then I want you to get the idea that it's time to start. It's time to start. When would now be a good time? Now. Your child deserves it, and guess what? You deserve it, and you need some help. I am sure that you need some help. Please let us know what you need, what kind of help you need. Even if it's you need somebody to yell at, I'm here. You can yell at me and say, this is stinking hard. I don't appreciate this. I had plans. I had things I was going to do. I had plans for my child. I do not like this road bump. Gotcha. I'm here. I'll listen to it. If it's that you need help figuring out how you're going to pay for this, you know what? Please let me know. Let's talk about where you are, what your choices are, because I'm here to tell you that you do have choices and you have options. They're not the same as everybody else's. And for some of you, it's disgusting to me that for some of you, I'm able to tell you, you won the lottery, you live in a state, you're going to get the help that you need starting on this date. For some of you, it's still in the pipeline. But you still have choices. And I want you all to know that. You all have choices. There are things that you can do. We're going to talk about some of the different things that you can do. But if you want to know funding-wise for your particular situation, call me. Email me. Let me know. Let's work on it together. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work. All right. But it's important to start now, and we're going to be talking about that all this week. Some of the things that we have going on today, we're going to give you a team building tip that's going to be helpful to all of you. Yes, all of you. And we also have Evelyn Gould is going to be here with us. She's a wonderful BCBA. It's a wonderful time at 10 o'clock. If you have questions about things, how to use your ABA tools, how to cope with the stress of what is happening to you, because that's a part of this. And Evelyn is great at talking to us about those kinds of things. So, and she's got so many years of experience working with children and challenging behavior, so bring on those questions. And then at 11 o'clock, we have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. My wonderful co-host, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, is going to be with us. And usually we have another guest that we bring in, but Nancy goes around the world and speaks at events and about empowering parents and how we can turn this around and find our true selves and our true passion on this journey with our child through autism. I mentioned Sean Colton the other day, that author of Legends of the Boo Monster. He was on our show about a week and a half ago, and he said, I didn't find my voice until my child didn't have one. I'm sorry, that just gives me chills, right? I said to somebody yesterday too that we made this decision that if we were going to go through this, if this was going to be our lot in life and our child was going to be that one in, at the time, 110, right? Then it better mean something. It better help somebody besides us. It better stand for something. And I can tell you that my life is changed permanently in a lot of ways for the better, and that has given me some peace. Some peace to say, I really am at the point where I'm like, wow, my family is closer. I am closer with my child than I think I would have been had we not been on this journey. Would I have picked it? No way. No. But since we're here, let's make it count. And Nancy is all about empowering us to help us to stand up, be our very best selves, our highest possible potential for us, so that we can help our children to reach their highest potential. She's an amazing, amazing speaker. So we're going to do things a little differently today. And when she's here at 11 o'clock, I'm going to interview her, and we're going to give her an opportunity to help us, because she's awesome. I say that every week, but she is. So we need to take some time and let you learn about the wonderful Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to take a break. I'm going to see if I can't get this allergy thing together. And then we are going to have an awesome summer play tip for you. I think you're really going to enjoy this. So stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age, which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provide you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's that time of the week when we talk about play and how we can help our children to enjoy play, because one of the most important things we have to remember is that things that we assume would be reinforcing to our children are not necessarily, and play is a big one in that category. For our kids, sometimes it just is work, or it's boring, or it's flat out aversive. That can be so disconcerting, and it can be so emotional for a parent, and it can prevent us from knowing what to do, from knowing how to play with our children. I think that, my expectations, I'm going to speak from my personal experience here, my expectations as a parent, I had always been the aunt that rolled around on the floor with the kids and told the stories and played and was interactive and was imaginative, and if it was somebody else's kid, boy, I could play with anybody's child. And then my child came, and I, started out and I was able to play with him and everything was wonderful, and then autism came to live at our house, and I gotta be honest, he wasn't responding to my bag of tricks, and that was emotional to me, and because I didn't understand autism and I didn't understand that I needed to find different ways of connecting with him, there was a part of me that was so hurt and depressed by it. Finally though, I had access to people who were like, oh, no, you're not giving up on that. You are going to play with your child. I will be 100% honest and tell you that I do not play as much with my child as my husband does. My husband is a rock star when it comes to playing, and it's high irony because we had our child later in life than a lot of people do. I was not worried about that at all. My husband he was worried. He said, oh, I don't want to be that dad that's too old to get on the floor and roll around with the kids. I don't want to be that, stodgy old guy who's like, stop it and stop making noise. And I wasn't worried about it. I was like, oh, you'll roll on the floor. It'll be okay. And da-da-da-da. Well, I was right in that respect. He rolls on the floor with my son. They wrestle. They do all kinds of things. They play silly games. They have an awesome, awesome time. And when I take the time and I really have to schedule it, I am able to play with my child now, and he enjoys playing. My problem is I get bogged down in, there's laundry to do. I got to make this phone call. I got to unload the dishwasher. Crab apple. I'm the stodgy old mom who's like, I don't want to get my pants dirty. I'm not rolling around on the floor with you crazy people. Yeah, right? But I have to schedule the time and say, no other distractions, playing with my kid now. And then I have to leave my expectations at the door. And I'm not so good at that either, I have to be honest with you. But there are some things that we can do to help make it reinforcing for us to play with our children in the way that they want to be played with, and help us to build their skills at the same time so that they find play reinforcing and are able to find new ways of playing that are reinforcing to them. Well, we have a great opportunity right now because it's summer and we might have a little bit more flexible time, maybe, not in all cases, but in some cases. But even if you don't, try to schedule some time for just some raucous fun that's educational and will hopefully be reinforcing for your child. So I love doing a treasure hunt. It's one of the great lessons that when you're doing a treasure hunt, you're working on about 35 different things at the same time, right? And you can specify which things that you want to work on. If you're working on letters, if your child is 3 or 4 or 5 and you're working on the alphabet, you can say, okay, we're going to do a treasure hunt with the alphabet, and gear the whole treasure hunt towards the alphabet. And you think to yourself, you got to think backwards. This really requires executive function in a parent, because you got to think backwards and think, okay, what is the treasure going to be? And the treasure has to be something that's really reinforcing for the child, something that's mega, mega, mega reinforcing. So let's say that the child really, let's imagine that, all I can think of like negative things that, that like cotton candy. We don't necessarily want to give sugar every time, and my child doesn't eat sugar. So, but I'm thinking of something that's really, really reinforcing to most kids. Let's imagine, I don't know, it's a toy that you found on sale and that you know that they want and you've been saving it for a special occasion, or it's a toy that they thought was missing and you found it. You cleaned out the toy box and you found the toy, or it's just a toy that they don't get as much time to spend with, right? So you take that toy and you're going to hide it in a specific place. And you know where you hid it, and you have to work backwards. Now, the younger the child, the fewer the steps you want to do. And when we're starting out, and if it's the first time you're doing a treasure hunt with a child, you want to make sure that you don't have more than 3 steps, even if they're an older child, because what we're teaching is when you do the steps, you're going to find the reinforcement wherever it is that's hidden. So you work backwards. And let's go back to our example of if we're doing the alphabet. So working on the alphabet, and let's say that our letters for the week are B and D. And those are the 2 letters that you've been working on, having the child recognize an uppercase B and recognize an uppercase D and be able to, point to them and label them, right? So we're also going to be working on tacting here too, because we're going to take a big sheet of paper and we're either going to draw a B on it, or you can print one out in your printer, just do it as big as you possibly can. And if we say B is going to be the last clue, so maybe we hide the toy behind a tree and we tack a big, with a piece of tape, so we don't want to hurt the tree, a big letter B to it, right? So that's going to be our ending clue. And now we have our piece of paper that has the D on it, and we're going to make some sort of a clue that goes from the D to the B. So it has the D on it, and we say something like, look behind the tree to find, or look at the tree to find the B, right? Rhymes, it's fabulous. We're working on rhyming. We're going to take that letter D and we're going to put it someplace really fun, and we might attach something that's a little reinforcing to it, but not the big reinforcer. So maybe it's got some sort of fidget toy attached to it that they get to hold while they're going to look for the B. So maybe we put that on the television set. And then we want to make another clue that has like the treasure map on it that shows the TV and shows the tree on it with a big X on the tree that says surprise or whatever. You can get really creative here. and you can make some sort of little poem about finding the D on the TV. All rhyming, right? So we go to the child, and we have to plan this ahead of time. So maybe you do it in the morning before the child gets up, or you do it the night before, whatever it is. And you go to the child and say, "Arg, matey, we're going to go on a treasure hunt," or whatever it is. You can have patches if you want, and put costumes on, so you're working on socio-dramatic play at the same time, and you get the child into it and say, you know, we're going on a treasure hunt and we're going to find something fabulous. And you help them and prompt them along the way. But eventually, you know, they'll look at the treasure map and they'll go, you know, I don't know, you could say, what is that? And maybe there's a clue that says this is where you watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, whatever it is. And they're going to think, you know, lots of different things, and you're going to have to help them and prompt them depending on whether they can read, whether they have great receptive skills. But even if they don't, even if you're saying, I think we should go look at the TV because this looks like a TV on the treasure map. Let's go see if there's something on the TV. Then you go into the room where the TV is and you don't say anything. But hopefully there's a big piece of paper with a big D attached to the TV, and you wait. And maybe you have to give some hints and say, where do we watch the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and point, and give the child the opportunity to point and go, it's a D, it's a D. So that's tacting right there, right? And they're problem solving. So they take the D, and you could say, oh, look, this says something about a tree. Where would we find a tree? And so then the child is looking for a tree, right? They're problem solving, and they might go outside and they see the bee on the tree, another opportunity to tact. And you're interacting with them and teaching them that problem solving is fun and that there's a big reward. And you're teaching them about steps. And by the way, you can make this as difficult as you want to. You can, or you can make it as simple as you want to. We played a treasure hunt at my son's 4th birthday party. And so he had been in ABA for a year, but we really hadn't come that far. And we were playing with a bunch of 4-year-olds and a bunch of 3-year-olds and a bunch of 2-year-olds on the spectrum and not on the spectrum. And some of them got what was happening, and others just got the enthusiasm of it. And when we got to the final clue and they had little treasure boxes that had, you know, their parting gift in it, everyone was excited. Everyone was excited. It doesn't have to be complicated, but if you want to, if you have a child that's 12, you can make it very complicated. When I was in high school and even in college, there was a game that we played called 5 Clues, which is basically a treasure hunt, and you'd split into 2 teams, and you had to work backwards. Again, lay on the ground for EF, because when we want to achieve a goal, we know we have to work backwards and figure out, okay, well, this is where I want to end up, so I got to go backwards to start off. So we would play 5 clues, and people would write a riddle and hide it in the last place and then go to the next place. And, you know, I remember somebody hiding something inside a hollowed out lemon in the drawer in the refrigerator. We had great fun playing those games. And that was teenagers. So make it as interesting and as reinforcing for you as you want to, but remember to make it reinforcing for your child. Match their skill level to the clues and their age to the clues and the reinforcement to them specifically. But you can prompt all along the way. It's not about them getting it right when we're doing play skills, right? It's about them enjoying the process. And so if you have to attach some little thing to each one of the clues that's really exciting, like maybe if they're into pirates, maybe on the first one there's the eye patch that they can put on, and on the second one there's a bandana. And you can make these things yourself. You don't have to go and spend money. All you need is a magic marker and a piece of paper, and look around the house and attach things that they already have that they find reinforcing to the clues. They'll still think it's exciting. It's a great way to play with your kids. And if you made it reinforcing enough, all of our kids will find it pleasurable. Treasure hunt, really fun thing to do in the summer, and a great thing to do with a play date. Spectacular. I hope you have fun with that. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about a building your team tip for training your team. So stick with us.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz. And once you pass that quiz, you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm just creating something here on the fly. We always talk about a team, that it's so important for us to recognize and accept and come to peace with the fact that if we have a child with autism, we are going to need a team of people to help us to get through this in lots of different ways. And I know as a parent, this is one of the hardest, most humbling things for me, because I think I am the mama. I am supposed to be able to do this. I am supposed to have some sort of innate programming that allows me to know what to do for my child, right? Isn't that the fallacy that some of us believe? Except it is, you know, if you said that to me, here's how funny we are as people. If you said that to me and said, well, my expectation is that I'm supposed to know how to do all this myself, I would know for you and say, wow, that's so unrealistic and so unkind to yourself. And it's really not going to help your child. You need to let that go and, you know, get the help that you need and get other people to help your child and let go of this really not helpful expectation. But when it's me feeling it, I still struggle. So please know that if you're feeling that way too, you're not the only one, but we do need to work on that and let go of it and say, I need a team of people. We know that ABA is effective, and as effective as you want to be as a parent, and it's important that you be a part of that team, it is essential that you be a part of that team, right? But in order for us to truly create a situation in which we're going to work towards generalization, there has to be at least 2 people, has to be. And really, if we're going to go for ideal, a minimum of 3 people. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be family members, right? We've talked about this a lot because somebody had asked the question last week about, you know, because parents have a different relationship with their children, can they be as effective as a total stranger or somebody who is not the parent, who has the same training? And I think, you know, there's no hard and fast answer, and I don't think there's any hard and fast research, but we all know that as parents we have baggage, right? And that we have a relationship that exists with our child, that there are consequences and antecedents that have been in play for a while with this child. So there are expectations of what the consequences are going to be. And we have to overcome that. It's not impossible. It is not impossible at all. It's just more work for us than it is for somebody who comes in and knows the same thing, because they're starting with this clean slate, and that isn't possible for us. I think we got to come to peace with that too. But when we come to peace with those things and say, okay, we've got a team, and sometimes the people on the team who have less authority in this relationship than I have are going to find it easier to get my child to do what they want to do. Living with it. It's good for my child. I'm going to let go of the resentment and the fear and the anger that comes with that emotionally, right? And we have to think in terms of being a leader on the team a lot of the time. You may have a supervisor who's working with you, who's really designing the program for your child and the lessons and maintaining the therapist if you're lucky. That may be the case. But you are still a leader on this team because you know your child better than anybody else. So you have to step it up there, right? And in the case, like we were talking yesterday, when you don't have the benefit of a supervisor who is there and an organization that is delivering your ABA that's close by, where you can go and have clinics and they can see you regularly, if you're doing a workshop model or if you're going this alone and using the skills program, then you truly are the leader. You're the person who is driving this bus. And as the driver, you got to make sure that everybody on your team is properly and effectively trained, right? So we just saw a clip before when we were on the break about card e-learning, which was very timely because I want to talk to you a little bit about training your team and making sure that everybody has the same jargon, that everybody understands the words that you're using, that everybody understands the forms and data sheets that you're using, because you can have somebody who is wonderful and who's effective, but if they're not taking the data properly in a way that other people can read it, you are going to make mistakes and waste time. If the child, let's just say, for example, that you're going in and you're running a lesson with somebody, that you've got 3 therapists and they're all working on a specific lesson with your child, teaching them safety protocols for crossing the street. And you got one person who's taking data in one way and the other 2 are taking it in another way, but they're looking at the other person's data and assuming that they're taking the data the same way that they are. Decisions get made based on the data. So if somebody is getting it wrong, the child is going to end up having the lesson a lot longer than they could have, and they could have been moving on to something else, and time is of the essence, right? We're not going to waste our children's time. But or it could be the opposite, which I think is so detrimental, that the assumption is there that the child understands and has mastered the lesson, when in fact they haven't, because somebody has taken the data improperly. So people have to know and understand how to take the data, how to use the forms, and how to read the data that other people have put there. It is one of the hardest facts about this. We have to take the data. We have to understand the data, and everybody on the team has to take good data. Your data is only as good as the person who takes it the least well on the team. Right? And so we want to make sure that everybody on the team is trained to take the data and understands the basic principles of ABA in a way that they're going to help and support the team. How do you do that? How do you do that? Well, in some instances, you know, your team is being trained by your ABA provider, and that's wonderful. And you will be given some parent training, but you have to get up to speed so that you're in that same boat as those therapists that are coming in the door. So I thoroughly recommend CARD e-learning for you in that instance. That's the training that when beginning therapists come to CARD and they don't have other training, they do CARD e-learning first, and then they're going to get classroom experience, and then they're going to go and work with children. Well, you're going to get that classroom experience from your provider in all likelihood, that they're going to talk to you about things specifically for your child. So it's going to be shrunk down to just really only apply to your child, because really you're not trying to help everybody else's child right now. You're trying to help your child. And then you're going to get experience with your child, which is your one-on-one experience with the child, and you've already had some of that, and it's going to be ongoing. Plus you're going to get the opportunity to see the therapist interact with your child, and you're going to learn really, really quickly. But don't go in at a deficit. I didn't get to have the benefit of CARD e-learning when my child started therapy, nor did my husband, and we were running to catch up. I would recommend to any parent, do it for yourself. Do it for yourself. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to be a better leader. Be a strong member of that team. Then once you've done it, if you're in that category where you're doing the workshop model, and somebody's visiting to help and support your team, very likely and very hopefully you are going to give CARD e-learning to everybody on your team and have them to do it before that person comes in and trains, because you're going to get that much further. If they've already got the basics, then they're going to be able to jump into really specific things for your child. You're going to save time by having them have done CARD e-learning beforehand. And if you are going this on your own, and I know that a lot of you, bless you, at this moment in time you're either waiting for insurance reform or waiting for funding in some way or another, and you've said, I don't have time to wait. Now is a good time to start, and so if it falls to me, then I'm going to do it. So you've got skills and you've been doing CARD e-learning, and you're really going to rely on CARD e-learning to help you to get this staff of people trained. It's not going to be the only thing that you do, because you're going to watch how they interact with your child and you're going to intercede. But first step there is you understanding it, what you're going to get from CARD e-learning, and then giving it to them so that they can learn and building from there. We're here to support you in all those instances. If you say, you know, we did the CARD e-learning and now the therapists are doing this, but we've run into this little snag, write to us. Let's help to find solutions. We can't give child-specific advice because we don't know your child. I mean, it's as simple as that, and that would be a disservice to your child. But we can tell you, here's, you know, some things to look for. Here's some things that work in these different scenarios. You know, take a look at this. You know, or this is time when you got to call a BCBA in, because you're going to have to do that at some point. I think even if you're going it on your own, at some point you're going to have to call a BCBA in for some of the more challenging things, so that you don't waste precious time and resources. If you've got volunteers that are coming in 40 hours a week and working with a child, but something isn't working, you don't want to keep spending that 40 hours of volunteer time to go up against a wall. You want to bring a BCBA in and say, how do we solve this? Have the BCBA solve it in a week, so now your team is getting further. It will be worth it. So worth it. So CARD e-learning, I really recommend it. I did the original CARD e-learning, and now there's a parent CARD e-learning. I haven't done that yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And let me just tell you, I learned so much from CARD e-learning, and so wished that I had had it on my first day. So check it out. Card e-learning. All right, we got to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to be joined by the fabulous Evelyn Gould. And we're not taking a break. I don't know why I said that. We're going to go to the A word. It's that time of the day when we show this wonderful, wonderful documentary that is being made at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who is not yet 3. He's about to turn 3 at this point in the video, but he's gotten an early birthday present. He's got a new baby sister. So his whole world is a little bit different than it once was, and he's having to sort that out. And so is everybody else. And Jack Riley is bringing some challenging behavior to the table, saying, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I'm feeling a little out of sorts. And I don't know if I want to do what you asked me to do that I was doing last week. And we're going to see the therapist deal with when a child who's been compliant isn't compliant, because that's going to come up over and over and over again. So take a look. This is the A word.
You were over this. We did this like 5 months ago. I know, that's you. Hi, look.
Hi, look.
You can say hi.
Hi.
Say, I'm Jack Riley.
I Jack Riley. I got. Really? It's showtime.
It's showtime.
Sit down. I can eat.
Look what I have. Do you want to play with your rug?
The rug.
Whoa, you want to play?
To play.
Okay, then you need to get your stickers. Do you want the rug?
What's the rug?
Okay, you need to sit here. No, you need to sit right here. Sit down. Sit right here. You need to sit here, buddy. No. Or else we have to go sit on the chair, bud. Come on. Sit up. Okay. You're gonna sit on the chair then, dude. Ready? Clap your hands. Good. See, that's one sticker. Touch your head. There it is. You need to sit on chair, There you go. Thank you. You got one sticker for that. High fives. Very good. What do you want after the one sticker? iPhone. Okay. Let's see. Touch your back. Very good. See? You got it. High fives. I'll get it for you, okay? Cool. He's been having a lot of non-compliance lately with the other girls too. So most of our session might be compliance training today. It's basically asking him to do things he already does know, so he's successful. But just to get their focus back, by asking them to do things that they already do know, it kind of shifts their focus back on something else. And then I just bring in what I originally asked was to sit in the chair. And he was able to do it. I don't know if it's just, you know, his baby sister or just, it's just been lately. Okay, my turn. Okay, we're gonna get 5 stickers again. What do you want to do?
iPhone.
More iPhone? Okay, sure. Okay, ready? Stand up. Good job. Here's 1 sticker. Clap your hands. Good job. Touch your nose. Where's your nose? Good job. Touch your ears. Nice. 1 more. Sit down. Nice. Very good. Here you go. So I'll do that just a couple times just to get him back in the groove of things. Get back. What are you doing?
Pooping.
You're pooping? Oh, okay. You going potty?
Going to party.
Are you going poo-poo?
I'll go to a party. You're poo-poo.
You have poo-poo in your diaper?
Poopy your diapers.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, are you pooping? Oh, maybe it is. Are you all done? Okay. One more minute to go poop. Yeah, and then we're gonna get your dad, okay? Okay, we're gonna go see Daddy. Okay? And go show Daddy to say, Daddy, I pooped.
Daddy, I pooped.
Go find Daddy. Yeah, she's just doing it. No? Yeah? Yay! You said you pooped and you did!
You pooped, huh?
Yay!
That's really good. I'm really proud of you. Look at me. I'm really proud of you.
You're going to be a star. You're going to be a superstar. She was very fussy until right this second. That's Big Brother's girlfriend.
How are they doing together?
He mostly ignores her. Although he did have a little monologue yesterday where out of the blue he said, "Bless you, Lainey Grace." And then he said a few other things about her too.
I love you, Lainey Grace.
I love you, Lainey Grace.
Oh, that's sweet.
And he'll kiss her head and thinks that's funny because, of course, Mommy gives her big reactions to his kisses. She says, "Ooh, I like that kiss." So he likes to do it like 45 times. But most of the time, if you ask him what his sister's name is or anything about his sister, he pretends like he didn't hear you, which is fine. We're not in a hurry.
Jealousy to work out on, I think.
And we are very careful if he wants me to, whoever's got her, if he tries to get our attention or whatever. If we can, we give it to him. There's going to be plenty of times where we can't. So we're trying not to have her be the reason we have to say no. For now.
Success. It's been an eventful 1 hour since we've been here.
Exciting.
I know.
Jam-packed. This is going to be an exciting episode ahead. There's baby, there's pooping, there's tantruming, there's
Yes!
everything.
Only the first hour, Suzanne.
know.
See what the second hour will bring us.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters, broadcasting to you live, and we have with us the wonderful Evelyn Gould. She's a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst. I'm always telling you guys, I'm not a BCBA. She is a BCBA, and that's a wonderful thing. So if you have questions, I tend to not go over this, but if you have questions and you are watching us right now on autism-live.com, and it says live across the top of the screen, then there's a question box there, and you can type in your question right now, hit enter, and it will appear right here on the screen, and I can ask Evelyn on your behalf. If you're watching and it says rebroadcast, or you're watching us on any of the other different places that we're available, like on Blip TV or on YouTube, then you can still get a hold of us. We're going to put up the email address that you can email to us, and we will answer your question on the next available live show. There it is. So feel free to email us. You could call us as well. We do appreciate your phone calls, and can we give them the phone number too, Emily? I'm just making Emily work really hard. She's about to go on vacation, and so we got to make her work really hard before she goes. Of course, then she's never going to want to come back, right? I've got it all backwards in terms of ABA. But in any case, there's the phone number. Thank you, Emily. So lots of things to talk about today until you guys ask a question. But I specifically said, okay, Evelyn, can we talk about a couple of things? Can we talk, earlier we had you come in on Friday on an unscheduled day to talk because a dad had written in and said, you know, we're running into some different issues, and my wife is to the point where she's frustrated and occasionally raising her voice, and, you know, and there were some other aspects to that question, but it really resonated with me because I am someone who is capable of raising my voice, and I don't like it when I do that. And I was saying to Evelyn while we were in break that I have a child who's pushing my buttons, and I know that he's pushing my buttons. I know that that's what's happening, and I got to the point where I yelled last night and said, "It's your bedtime." I think actually I said, "It's way past your bedtime." And then I just stopped speaking to him. So that was my last interaction with my child last night. Brilliant, brilliant parenting. I'm so glad that I can be here and set a terrible example. And we were talking about when somebody's pushing your buttons, and that I know that he waits until I am exhausted. And like, I don't know whether he's fully aware of it, but he waits until I'm exhausted, and then he just, there's the button, there's the button, there's the button. And I get to the point, and what my brain thinks is that it takes me yelling for him to know we're done. So I need to back up somewhere and find something else to do to let him know we're done. Because I have set this up to work this really messed up way. And I know that while I'm awake and with you all, but when it is 10:30 at night and I am exhausted, my brain can't seem to solve and understand that.
Right.
Help me. Help me.
Well, there's a few things going on. One of them is this idea of being tired and how much harder it makes things, how much harder it is for you to deal with certain things whenever you're tired.
Yeah.
And I've been on the show a long time ago now talking about something called motivating operations.
Yes.
And anyway, they're just, basically these are just things that kind of set the scene prior to something happening, some trigger occurring. And what happens with those things that are setting the scene is that they make something more or less likely to annoy you, or more or less likely to have you react and behave in a certain way. So you're more likely to engage in certain behaviours if something happens, or you're less likely to engage in certain behaviours if something happens. So certain things can be more reinforcing than they normally would be, or more punishing than they normally would be. Yeah. So when you're tired, that's a motivating operation, basically.
Yes.
It's going to make certain things more appealing to you and less appealing to you. So in terms of your son's behaviour, when you're tired, you're going to find it harder to not react to his like
ding 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 ding,
and escaping him like going is more reinforcing to you, so you're more likely to engage in the yelling behaviour, right? So what I would suggest is that if you're aware that you're tired, because we don't know that your son is definitely waiting specifically for you to be tired. It may be that your behaviour changes slightly when you're tired. Maybe it's at a certain point in the day when he's maybe getting a bit less attention, or what's happened is in the past he's obviously getting some kind of reinforcement for, you know, nagging you or whatever it is, and perhaps the yelling, whatever it is. But this has kind of got into a pattern.
Yes.
So I think what to do is, if you're tired, prior to him prior to him starting to annoy you and starting the button pushing, if you can figure out some kind of way to interact with him that might prevent that cycle from starting, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I, you know, after I yelled at him and I was in the shower and I was going, oh, you know, it's just not the best thing to do. And, you know, what is it that I, you know, and I really was in the shower thinking about, okay, so what was the antecedent here? What's going on with me? I'm way too tired. And what should I be doing to get the behavior that I want, which is for him to go to bed and stay in there, and that I have not made that reinforcing enough. It is much more reinforcing because he gets attention and he gets to escape being in bed, even for a second, to come in and be yelled at.
Exactly.
So, and I don't want to be setting up a circumstance in which I'm going, here, I want to make it worthwhile for you to get yelled at.
Yeah, and we've also talked a bit about punishment and the fact that kids get very quickly immune to certain punishments. So yelling, if yelling results in him, you know, stopping nagging you, if it's effective and it stops him nagging, you're probably, that means it is a punishment. But that also means that he's like, over time, he's going to become less, more and more immune. So he's going to up the ante more before it gets to the point where it's actually going to work, and you're going to have to up your screaming, because you're going to have to make the punishment even more, because it's just not going to work.
Right.
So it's definitely important to remember that, and then back up to when you start to think, oh, I'm getting tired, I really need him to go to bed, and then intervene at that stage, and like you saying, introducing some reinforcement somewhere for him going to bed and doing what you want him to do.
Yeah, and I think it's in the neighborhood of, you know, that I gotta come up with something that he gets first thing in the morning if he has gone to bed and stayed in bed.
Yeah, and if probably that sounds like for your son that would work well, because he's used to this kind of idea of tokens and so on, and he has an understanding of delayed reinforcement, like he can get that.
Yeah, but if he doesn't, how can I do something that's in the moment? Help me to know. Because all I can think of is something in the morning. Or do I give him something to do in bed? Because otherwise, I'm afraid if I give him something to do in bed, it draws out the amount of time. So it'll just be that much later when I'm that much more tired.
Right. So perhaps what you need to do is have something to bridge the gap from then in the morning, even a token system. So maybe each stage of getting ready to bed, or whatever his routine is, the first time you say to him, I think it's bedtime now, if he goes to bed then he gets a token, which means he knows he can exchange that for what he wants in the morning or something like that. Just something that you can give him that's brief, that isn't going to keep him awake or isn't going to interfere with his routine, that he can then, but then he has it and he knows that that means that he's getting whatever it is in the morning.
And it does make a difference when it's something that's tangible. So if I give him a token and say, you know, and the token can be a quarter or it can be a token, something that he can exchange for what he wants in the morning.
I mean, perhaps you can give him the token and like a sheet that has like a selection of the things he can choose from, and he can take that and sit in bed and decide what it is he's going to get for his token, and then in the morning he gets to exchange it.
Right.
So he's kind of
But if he gets up, the token gets taken away.
I think what you might want to do is, I mean, I don't like taking things away.
Right, because that becomes cost response.
Yes, a response cost. And then what can happen is you can get to a point where you can't take anything away anymore, and then it's kind of like the kid's kind of like, so what? I can't get it anyway. So what you might want to do is to have more than one token, so you're reinforcing different parts of the routine.
Yeah.
So you have like a token for him going to his bedroom when you tell him, and then you have a token for him staying in bed, or something like that. And maybe it's about building it up and not expecting.
But you got to get all three in order to watch SpongeBob when you're getting ready to go to camp.
Yeah, something like that might work. Or even like contract, he might be able to at this point respond well to a behaviour contract. So, and that means that you agree with him that if he does something, then you're also going to do something.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, I agree that I'm not going to yell at you and blah blah blah. Whatever he decides he wants you to do less of, like he has to do his part too.
Yeah.
And if he does his part, then he gets his reward.
You know what, honestly, he's been complaining about a lot lately is that we motor him from time to time. If he's not moving fast enough, I motor him. You know, we've had years of us doing this, and if he's not doing it, I just motor him along. And he said to me the other day, he said, "Mom, I am not a doll." And I said, "Who said you were a doll?" I said, "You're beautiful like a doll, but you know, who said you were a doll?" And he said, "This is what it feels like for me." And he reached up and he started moving me around, and he said, "That's what it feels like to be me," which was kind of brilliant. And I said, "Oh, I wouldn't like that either." And so I could say to him, "Look, I am not going to treat you like a doll." His words, because I call it motoring. If you do what you need to do, there's our contract.
Yeah, you need to make it very specific and make it doable. So I would only include like 1-2 things in there. Don't have like a whole, I agree to not do this. That's not going to be very effective. Keep it simple. Keep it very simple. Keep it very tangible, like, you know, or very not vague, basically. Like, make sure it's very specific about exactly what it is you're going to do, exactly what he's going to do, and what he's going to get.
So a stranger's, I got to have it clear enough that a stranger could understand
exactly. Yeah. I need to come in and look at it and be like, oh, I know exactly what I'm looking for to see, and I'll know exactly when you're doing what you're supposed to do and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And have everything in there, and have like, make sure you're clear about what he's going to get and when he's going to get it.
Yeah.
And then I would go through that contract before you start engaging in either of the bedtime routines or whatever it is around the contract. So make sure you're going over it all the time, and make sure that you formulate that contract with him so that it has to be fair. Like, make sure that he, you know, you may not want to have to do the thing that he wants you to do, but that's the deal. It's a contract, so it's got to be fair, and you have to do your part.
Okay, so I can't do it on my own. I have to consult him because he's going to tell me what he wants as a result of it.
And then you can negotiate with him.
He's good at the negotiation thing. I'm thinking, you know, he wants to be a rocket.
He's more likely to go through the contract if he feels like it's in his benefit and he's had control over it and he's getting mom to do what he wants to, like you're both signing the contract and so on.
Okay.
And then I would also support it with the tokens, can work really well too.
Support it with?
The tokens. The idea or whatever, just so you can remind him when he's done what he's supposed to do. So as soon as he does what he's supposed to do, be like, that's brilliant, you went to bed when I told you, here stick this on your little board or whatever. That extra reinforcement initially will be helpful. And then of course there's what if he doesn't do what you tell him to do anyway, then it's about planned ignoring.
Yeah.
And that's also, again, extra hard to do when you're irritable and tired.
Yeah.
It's even harder to ignore things that are designed to annoy you, because that's why he does them, because he knows they're going to get a reaction from you.
Yeah.
But I think You should, as a rule, I would say tell him twice maximum what he has to do, and then, because after that you're just not being effective anyway. He's not following through, and you're just going to end up yelling. Yeah. So twice, and then you just have to ignore.
The tough part is that when it comes to going to bed, that when the child gets up out of bed, you know, you're trying not to give attention because you know that it's attention driven, but there's also that element of escape. So while you're ignoring it, they're getting the escape from the bed. So I guess I should ignore it, but motor him back to the bed.
Try and guide him back, and just remember that he should be. Try and make going to bed more reinforcing than getting out of bed. That is basically the key, because you want him to not be of any benefit to him to get up, basically, and that he doesn't get any attention from you. He doesn't get to do anything fun. Yeah. It's just boring. Yeah. Whereas if he goes to bed, he's going to get these prizes or whatever in the morning. Right. So you need to make going to bed reinforcing, and not being in bed not reinforcing.
I remember when he was a baby, and nobody had told me until like a week before we had him, that you need to set up your hours as a pregnant woman, the hours that you want it to be when the baby comes. And I had gestational diabetes and was so worried, and it was my first child. And, you know, so I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning every single night, and pacing the floor and worrying and uncomfortable and all these different things. So then, you know, out comes this child who would be up every single night until 2 o'clock in the morning. And because it didn't occur to me that the child inside is the child that comes out. Never even occurred to me. Nobody explained that to me. There was no diagram in a book that explained that, and they were going to keep the same hours. So now I wanted to go to bed earlier, and there was no possibility of doing it. I remember saying something to the pediatrician, and he said, well, what happens when he, you know, is awake at night? And I said, well, you know, I get up and I rock him and I sing to him. And he said, the lights are on. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I'd want to be up too. If I could get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you'd talk to me and sing to me and we'd have conversation and the lights would be on, I'd think it was a party. Sounds like a party to me. And he said, you know, so when he's awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, have nothing going on. Yeah, exactly. Nothing going on. Exactly. You're not talking to him. You can be holding him. But, you know, don't have the lights on, no singing, no rocking, you know, don't make it the fun party. And that hadn't occurred to me, I have to be honest. It's amazing. You know, you go, well, duh. Yeah. But, and there are things that he gets up that he, you know, because mom and dad, it's the 5 minutes that I get to talk to my husband, and he wants to be there right in the middle. What are you talking about? What are you watching on TV? What are you doing? What are you doing on the computer, Mom? Right? And I'm too tired. Okay, so making it more reinforcing, I got to go back to the basics.
That's the key, basically.
It is the key. So I have to figure out what it is in the morning that he doesn't usually have access to, that I'm going to let him have access to, that's going to be worth his while to get his keister in the bed and keep it there.
Yeah, I mean, depending on, I think you're going to have to provide more reinforcement at the start, obviously, and then you can feed it out. But I think depending on him, you may want to do kind of like build up to him getting something at the weekend. So then you might be able to have like a fun thing that he gets to do at the weekend, and he can collect his tokens through the week. If he gets a certain amount, or he goes to bed every day of the week, then he gets a special thing. But you definitely need something in the morning. Right. But I'm just thinking, like, it doesn't have to be a massive thing. If the massive thing can come later, like if he gets a certain amount of tokens, then he gets to do this thing at the weekend for great going to bed or whatever. Yeah. So you could have a smaller thing that he really wants in the morning, but initially, the first week or so, you might want that.
Yeah, got to have something fairly immediately, but it can be a smaller thing. All right, you got me thinking. I'm seeing craft project in my future.
And again, I think the idea of maybe not agreeing to not whatever I would call that, motoring him along, but motoring him along. That might also be motivating to him, because if he breaks his part in the contract, then you can motor him back to bed. Right. So, but if he does play his part, then you're not going to do that annoying thing to him.
Right. Right. Which I can completely understand why he doesn't want that. But you know, when it's 10:30 at night and the child is still awake. I'm just saying. All right, really interesting. And so we have much more to talk about with Evelyn. I want to remind you that if you have questions, that you can be writing them in now. If you're watching live, you can type into that box and just hit enter and it shows up here. Or you can be emailing us, and she's here every Wednesday, so we can talk to her next Wednesday as well. But we've got more topics to talk about, so stick with us. Back in just a few.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
And there was my little bundle of joy you were just watching during that clip. I love that little boy, and I love that he's smart enough that he knows how to push my buttons. That's a good thing that he knows how to do that. But in any case, we haven't had time to talk about in a while how you came to the field of ABA and how you started working with children on the autism spectrum. And I always find that a really interesting topic. So tell us the Evelyn Gould story of how Evelyn Gould and autism. How did this happen?
Well, where do I start? Well, I mean, as an undergraduate, I had to do a class in behaviour analysis as part of my applied psychology course. But to be honest with you, that didn't really grab me at all because it was very dry. It was almost like a really crazy maths class. It was more like we had a textbook that looked like a math textbook. It had diagrams of pigeons, and it was just very dry and not really very applied to real life.
You know, you're not shocking us.
No,
because those of us who've tried to look it up and went, what?
Yeah, so I did this course, and I was like, oh, I don't know. It was fine, but didn't really pull me in. And then, because I did an applied degree, we had to do a work placement as part of our degree. I guess you'd call it a practicum or something here. And I actually I just wanted to go away. I just wanted to go away, and some people had been in Florida the year before me, and I really wanted to go out there, not really knowing anything about who I was going to work with or anything like that. So I just was, I want to go to America, I want to go to America.
You wanted the adventure.
Yes, I just wanted to go. I wanted the opportunity to go away, and it was just very exciting to me, it was very strange to me that most of the other people didn't want to go to the international placements. They just wanted to stay close to home, which is very bizarre. But I don't know, that's the difference.
Right, we all find different things reinforcing.
Yeah, and I guess other people wanted to stay by their families, and they don't really enjoy being away from home, because it was for 6 months, so you were, and it was before Facebook and all that stuff. So it was a lot harder to stay in touch. Like, I actually wrote letters and then used a telephone, like a proper telephone, to keep in touch with people.
And it was shockingly expensive.
Yeah, well, it wasn't too bad because we bought phone cards. We managed to get phone cards, and that made it pretty cheap. But still, it was very different from now, where I feel like I can talk to my friends through free text messaging and all these amazing things. Anyway, that's beside the point. But so I ended up going to Florida for 6 months and ended up not realizing it, but working with this man called Professor Stokes, Dr. Stokes, Trevor Stokes, and he's actually one of the very founding key people in behaviour analysis. For anyone in the field will know that. And he was working at the time at the University of South Florida, and I basically assisted him and followed him around helping him in everything that he was doing. So one of those things was working in a clinic, a learning behaviour clinic in a Shriners hospital every week. And it was a for those of you who don't know, Shriners hospitals are free hospitals for children, and this one's an orthopaedic hospital. So the kids that were coming to the clinic were basically referred there usually by the nurses or doctors, or because they had like aside from their orthopedic problems, they maybe had some other learning behaviour, psychological issues going on that were noticed that were possibly interfering with their treatment and their recovery. So we had like we had some kids with autism, but then we had a lot of kids with, say, cerebral palsy. We had like kids who'd had major accidents, like one boy who'd had his ear bitten off by a horse, and other kid who'd been like run over, unfortunately, by his father in a tractor on the farm, and like, so it was a wide range of kids there, like all kids from all different areas, but they all had behaviour problems or learning difficulties. And so most of the people working in the clinic were behaviour analysis students or behaviour analysts, and there were also psychiatrists and other people there too, physical therapists and so on. But really that's what got me into behaviour analysis, because what I saw in that clinic was that nobody was a hopeless case, and like basically as soon as those families came through the door, they had hope that they could that things could be better, and they were always told that things could be better, and that just really struck a chord with me. Like I also noticed that by the time children often got to Dr. Stokes, they had been through like a zillion other psychologists, doctors, all the rest of it, and it was almost like they'd kind of gone, we do not know what to do with this kid anymore, here, give it to the behaviour analyst. Kind of at the end of the line. And then these families were just met with this like, doesn't matter what the problem is, we can fix it, we can sort this out. And that was just totally inspiring to me. I don't know, just the hope and this idea that every child could be the best that they could be, and like every family could work better was just really, 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 truly wonderful. And on a personal level too, because it made me feel like, oh, I can change and I can improve myself. And
you've totally messed up my makeup, can I tell you?
Sorry. I'm actually feeling upset myself.
No, it's not upset. I'm just like so inspired, Evelyn. You know, that we always think about, and I want you to finish the thought that you're thinking, but we always think about our kids and how difficult, and so I'm imagining that these kids didn't, you had some kids with autism, but they had other stuff as well. And how devastating that would be for a family, but how amazing that they found themselves in the place where there was hope. Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry, so finish your thought about, that they would get to this doctor and they'd have been told, that there's nothing anybody else could do. And this idea of like not blaming the family and the child per se, just being like, this is just a difficult problem and we can fix it. And things have gone a little bit wrong or whatever, and we just need to figure out what's going on and then we can make it better. And then if things didn't necessarily work the first time, it was like, okay, well, what have we not done? What part of this problem have we not understood properly? And how can we change what we're doing? Not like, well, we've done our part and it's your problem, and your child has cerebral palsy and that's just the way it is, or whatever it is, or your child has Duchenne's or whatever the disorder was. Because that's the other thing about that clinic, is there's a lot of kids who are coming in who have things like Duchenne's, I believe, and they're not going to live that long. These are things that are chronic illnesses, and so a lot of the problems come with like families trying to deal with those issues. And just to be given a little bit more hope that the time that this kid can be around can be made to be quality time with this family is just amazing. And anyway, it was quite an emotional
time for me, actually, personally, and I grew a lot, and I took a lot away from it, and then I was kind of like, what is this thing? I want to know what this thing is. And then, of course, it was behaviour analysis, or applied behaviour analysis in particular, and I left just being like, oh my goodness, I want to do this. This is the answer to everything. How come nobody knows about this? And came back to Ireland, was like, I have the answer. What do you hear about this amazing thing? And of course, I was met with just people being like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Or the worst, like they had very negative views.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing where they punish kids and they do this and they do that. They're just very ignorant of views. But I had my heart set on following that and trying to become a BCBA, and it was really hard work because it wasn't well known and it wasn't very respected at all, and not really, it was difficult to find training. In fact, there was only one master's course at that time in the whole of the UK and Ireland that was in behaviour analysis. And so I had to go to Wales to do that. But the only place that I could get a job was with children with autism. That was the only thing that was happening. And luckily for me, some parents had got together in Northern Ireland and raised a bunch of money to bring over some clinicians to move over from America and set up a clinic there, an applied ABA clinic. And so I was able to get a job as a therapist while I was finishing my studies. And later on, I moved to Wales and I was studying my master's, but I came back and did an internship with them and trained as a supervisor. And that's basically how I ended up doing what I do. And so the autism part was kind of by accident, because that's just where I could get a job working in the field. But the ABA part was definitely my experience of going to America and seeing just how it can help everybody. And I think that was a really good experience for me, because I don't just see it as an autism thing anymore. I see it as something that's life-changing for anybody, and it's universal, and you can apply these principles to your own life and to everyone else's.
Yeah, and it really is amazing, because now I understand better why you're so good with parents, because you started out in a clinic in which taking into account what the parents were going through was essential. Although I'm sure some people didn't. I think you're really sensitive to that kind of thing, and understanding what's going on for everybody, where a lot of people tend to gloss over that aspect of this journey.
I think as well, I had a lot of difficulties my own self as a child, as a young person, and so I know that it's at a certain point that I would have been considered a hopeless case, and no one knew what to do with me, and I really it brought up a lot of that for me at that clinic, because then I was thinking a lot about what my parents must have gone through and how that must have felt to them, like to have taken your child to here, or to not be able to get help, not to know what to do, and no one else being able to, or people just telling you things like, well, it's this diagnosis, or or your child has this problem. Like, I know my child has this problem, what do I do about it?
Right, as if there's a period at the end of that sentence, like, oh, now,
So no one knows what to do, or we don't have or being told we don't have any beds, we don't have any funding, we don't have this kind of thing. So I think it just on that personal level, it really struck a chord with me.
Well, thank goodness that you found our way to us, because you're such a huge benefit to us. And that's such an I'm sorry, I totally messed up my makeup, but it's a very inspirational story. I didn't realize that the Shriners had a behavioral health.
I'm not sure that this, I know that the clinic was set up in conjunction with the University of South Florida, because this particular Shriners Hospital is based in the University of South Florida grounds, and they had the behaviour analysis program there. So I think it was partly, I'm not sure how it went about getting set up, but they worked with, like Dr. Stokes and so on, worked with the clinic, with the hospital to set this extra free service up, which was then staffed by students so they could get practicum hours and so on, and supervision hours and trainee behaviour analysts. And then I think, there were certain things that we had to do, like we had to have a psychiatrist on board, because that was a requirement of the hospital and so on. So I think that may have been very peculiar to that hospital, because of the collaboration with the university.
Still,
but it was an absolutely fantastic service.
It might be something worth looking into for some, because we've been talking all week long about funding and people who feel like they don't have options in different places. But the Shriners may be a place to look, and I know I'm going to look into that to see, if there are circumstances in which they take children with autism. If they have to always have an orthopedic genetic issue as well?
I think that for this clinic you had to come through the hospital.
Okay.
So all of these kids would have previously been patients of the hospital, and that's why it's such diverse kids, because maybe they had like, if it was a child with autism, they maybe had a club foot, or like you know, they'd had an accident and had to have something done, or there was some other like.
They got them there, but then once they got there and it was impeding their progress.
They were all outpatients. So yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. All right, well, we're going to be back in just a few minutes. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk more with Evelyn Gould with more interesting topics. Now's a great time. If you want to ask a question, just type it into the Your Question box. Stick with us.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1,
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
So funny. Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We are here with a wonderful and inspirational Evelyn Gould. She's a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst. And we're so grateful that we have you here on Wednesdays to talk about things because you get it in a way that a lot of people don't. Our topic all this week has been EIBI, Early Intensive Behavioral Intervention. And anytime somebody's been sitting in that chair, we've been asking them, you know, your thoughts on EIBI and you know, what you've seen in the field about how important it is that we start our kids as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, and we just talked a bit in the break there, Shannon, but as soon as you possibly can, regardless of what age your child is.
Yeah.
And as soon as you realize that you have, you know, your kid has difficulties, or as soon as you manage to discover ABA or whatever it is for you, that you get the fund, exactly, as soon as the funding comes through, then you get your child started as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And I think something to think about, I think particularly, because the EIBI, obviously we have people who are really, really good at early intervention, and that's very young kids, and you get them as soon as possible. And those kids, from the research, we know that those kids are going to have the best kind of outcomes, or are most likely to catch up with their peers, because as a kid gets older, the gap is getting wider and wider and wider from their peers. So you've got a lot more to catch up the older your child is.
Yeah.
But if you have an older child, it's really important to not lose heart and think that you've missed your window and what am I going to do, and I should have started earlier and everything. You know, you got to get your kid into some kind of program, because you can make a lot of gains even with older kids, and there's a lot of research out there to show that ABA works for older kids. I mean, it works for all of us, so there's no reason to think why we can't help those kids too. But I do think it's important to find providers that know how to work with the older kids and are good at like individualization of programs. So they're going to design a program that's appropriate for your child's age, and it's because the focus is maybe going to be a bit different. So when you have a 2-year-old coming in EIBI, your program's going to look a lot different than if you maybe have like an 8 or 9-year-old coming in to work with you. Yeah, you're not going to be focusing necessarily on the same things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so you want to make sure that you have a clinician who's a BCBA or so on and has a lot of experience and can individualize a program for your particular child's needs and your family's needs.
Yeah. I think, you know, one of the biggest hurdles that we have to cross all the time as a parent once our child is diagnosed is getting everyone to see our child as an individual. And I don't think it matters whether the child is 2 or 22, but everyone, and your ABA provider included sometimes, you know, that it should go without saying, but I hear from parents all the time who say, you know, I'm struggling with you know, getting everyone on the team to see this child and free their mind of expectations other than this individual child. But our kids all need that, and our the amount of hours is going to be different for different children. The lessons that they're going to learn is different. There is no cookie cutter. We've been talking a lot lately about the tool belt of having the tools of ABA and applying them in this really creative art, this creative science to individual children.
And that is what makes a really good clinician as well. Like that clinician should be able to take the principles and apply them across whatever the skills and the needs are of the child. Not just be plucking out some, you know, out of a book some programs and just kind of giving them to you. Right. It's not going to be that effective.
It's got to be child specific, because otherwise we waste time.
And it's not just, you know, it's child specific, not just about like your child's individual skills or deficits or whatever it is. They've got to be able to look at, well, how many hours are we going to get funding? We need to maximize what we can get, what we can achieve within those hours. So you're going to want to think about, well, what can we work on with this child that's going to really, really benefit them when we're kind of constrained by this, and this, and then looking at the family and what your priorities are, and like, you know, do you have something coming up, like the child's starting school or a new classroom, or maybe you have to go on holiday and the kid can't, your kid is really struggling with sitting in the car, like immediate kind of things and long-term things that are going to shape what you're going to put into a program.
Absolutely.
And really, really individualizing that way, like considering all the resources and the time and everything else.
Yeah. I said in the beginning that I had a very scary moment when I thought maybe my child was unteachable. And then when I found out that my child was teachable, I think sometimes we get so excited by that and forget that that doesn't mean that everything is meaningful to teach. There are things that are meaningful, and we're getting a kid caught up so that they can reach their highest potential. We're not going to waste time on things that aren't meaningful. And at different times, for different kids, things might be meaningful. When my child was 4, gardening was not meaningful. It is now. But it wasn't at that time. My child was acquiring language. We didn't have time for gardening.
And it's very important that your clinician will be thinking about what types of things could this kid potentially learn from other people, so I can not spend time teaching those things, or can I teach this kid how to learn so that they can then learn colours in school rather than me having to teach colours at home and so on. Like, they're going to be trying to figure all that out and to maximise your child's learning, and they're going to be working with you or they should be working with you a lot to try and increase the opportunities for your kid to learn outside of the hours that they're with your child, because that's what's going to make the biggest difference, basically. It's like providing as many opportunities as possible, and that's at home, and because your child is with you all the time, or for a large proportion of the day. So the more that the clinician can help you get involved, the better.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the emotional side of EIBI, because we say and we say and we say, start as early as possible. But I think part of it is that, one of the stumbling blocks is all the emotion that comes with it. So that, and I mentioned this the other day, that when my child was diagnosed, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. One, that I wasn't going to find that there was anything that was effective, but equally as much, and just to be honest, I was afraid that I was going to find something that was effective, but that we weren't going to be able to do it because of funding, or because of time, or because something that I filled out the paper wrong, or whatever. And I was equally afraid that there was going to be something effective and that we couldn't have it, as I was that there wasn't going to be something. So I know that there are some of you who are out there who are afraid to ask, can I get ABA, because you're afraid you're going to find out that it's a huge bill and that you can't afford it. But we have to surmount that. We have to somehow get over that emotion and get into the space of saying it's going to happen. How do we help people to get to that point, Evelyn?
I think it's really hard.
It is hard.
I mean, we've talked a bit, Shannon, before about identifying your values and what's in your heart of hearts for that you want for your life, and who you want to be in your child, and what kind of parent you want to be. And I think identifying those things and just always having those in your mind when you're choosing what to do. Right. And then also we've talked a bit about this reality gap, this like black hole that just opens up whenever your child is diagnosed, and all you can see is this black hole of what you wanted, and now that's not there, or what you expected your life to be like and your child's life to be like, and now it's just this big black hole of unknown and change. And so trying to, if you can find a way to kind of open up your eyes so that you can see everything around you, and then move yourself towards your values. I think that's very abstract, but it is really hard to ask that question of, can I get ABA, because you have all these fears, and the fears are like this black hole, but there's all this other stuff out there, and you need to you need to ask that question and then deal with it, deal with the answer, kind of thing. Absolutely. Even though you're feeling really frightened.
Yeah, and I think part of that other stuff that you're talking about for people to see is that the world is filled with people like me who were also afraid but asked the question and got the therapy. And people like me who were afraid, and I asked the question, and initially, when I started finding out how much ABA was, it scared me like out of 7 years growth. I'm not kidding you. And everyone, and then we started, and I lost track of that, of how much, because we had found our funding, because I went to other families to see that they had found a way, and they helped me to find the way that they had found. Exactly. But I remember when we were like 2 years in, the state of California decided that they were going to start to send bills to families to let them know how much money had been spent on their child. We didn't have to pay it, but to let us know. I think it was sort of this like kind of, we just want to make you aware that this is why we're in such financial straits, because we just spent X amount of dollars on your child. And I have to say, when I looked at that bill and thought, oh my gosh, if somebody had shown this to me in the first year, I think I would have had a nervous breakdown. I just would have had a nervous breakdown. But I want you to know that when you see the whole picture, my child still got that therapy. And, so there are ways, and you won't be the first person to have found the way. There are those of us who are willing to say to you, okay, here's how we did it on this day, and here's how we did it on that day, and here's how people in your community do it.
It's like
don't miss out.
It is getting away from the tunnel vision that we talked about before, where everything's just like zoom, and all you can see is this tiny thing, and
the dollar.
Yeah, that's all. You just see this one thing, and it's about trying to like take a deep breath and then open up and look around you, because there are resources there for you to help you, and even if the worst fears happen, like, and you can't get the funding, you're still here with your child, and your child's still wonderful, and you can still like take it's kind of like an obstacle, and then you have to just find other ways to keep moving towards.
And there are other ways.
What you need, what you really want.
Yeah, there are other ways. Hey, we have a question. Hi, Shannon and Evelyn. Thanks for the wonderful show. Thank you for writing in. I'm a mom from India. I have a quick question. I remember you and Evelyn talking about airing a list of potential reinforcers sometime back. I'm curious to know if this topic was discussed in any show I missed. I missed many Wednesdays in the past 2 months. I'm still catching up with rebroadcasts. Thank you so much. I think we did do a show.
We did do a show about reinforcement, but I think, and I remember now, I think we said at the end we were going to bring the list, or I was going to pass the list to you, and I think we didn't end up talking about it again. So,
I think you're right.
Because I think it was like right before we had a bunch of weeks where there wasn't a show or something like that.
Yeah.
So I promised to send that to you right after the show.
Okay, and thanks for reminding us, because sometimes we forget. We are human too, and that's great. We need a.
I'm not sure if we can put the list somewhere for people. Or
you
if
know,
you just want to go over it.
I can find a place to put it and announce that. Okay. I'll ask our IT people, because we changed things around a little bit on the website. We can put it on our Facebook page. Emily just told me. Yes, so we'll put it on the Facebook page, and we'll give you the address to that. Thank you so much, Emily. Emily is the problem solver, so it'll be there by the end of today. Boom. Yeah, no, well, you have access to it?
Yeah, I have to find it on my hard drive.
All right.
I made a bunch of lists.
So it'll be there by the end of the week. Yeah. Maybe by the end of today. But thank you so much for reminding us, because that's a really important thing that we need to put up the list of reinforcers, because I think that's one of the hardest things for the parents.
Hard. And for therapists too. It's very hard to be creative and think about what can be reinforcing.
Yeah, but I think you guys come at it from a more open-minded thing. You're thinking about all children, and you don't take it personally.
That's experience, Shannon, because I don't think there's very few people who come in working with their first child ever and just know what to do.
That's true.
It comes from experience of trying stuff out and other people making suggestions, and then once you start kind of working with a few kids, then you start getting creative about it and being like, oh, I wonder if this makes this noise. I wonder if that would work, and this would that, and then we can try these things. Yeah. So I don't think you're born with this knowledge base of potential reinforcers. I do think it's like experience, and just, I mean, although there's some very experienced therapists who are maybe not so good at it, so it's definitely an element of creativity. But yeah, I think
but I was saying earlier that I had an expectation, because of all the children that I'd interacted with throughout my many years of not being a parent, that I had an expectation that my child was going to love all these things that all these other children had loved, and that was just not the case. And so there was an emotional element to it that, I felt like, oh, I'm not connecting with my child, and I've done something wrong, and I'm not a good parent, and I don't have a mothering instinct, and that it turned into all these other things that it wasn't. But it mushroomed into all those other things, and then I had to get over that hurdle.
Yeah, and we as therapists are lucky that we don't have that emotional hurdle. We can have thoughts about being inadequate as a therapist and so on, but we don't have the same judgments going on about parenting and our child and not connecting with our child and so on that you have to overcome.
But I think, and you just really said something important, because you said, we still have our emotions. And I think what's amazing is that in the training that I have seen that therapists go through, they're so good at hiding all of that I just assumed that you all think that you're wonderful.
No. Well, maybe they all do. I certainly don't. That's the thing. I'm saying things about other people, and really I don't know. I just know about myself, and I was very motivated. And I'm really motivated, and of course I have fears every time that I'm working with a child or a parent. It's like, oh no, what if it doesn't work, or what if I don't know what I'm doing, or what if the kid doesn't like me, and what if I'm not doing a good job, and oh no, that didn't work, and this I need to try this, and I'm scared before I try it, working with a new toy in case the kid doesn't like it. All of us have those fears, I think. I don't think it's just me.
No, I don't think so either.
I mean, unless you really don't care about your job, but it's very unusual for someone to get into this field and not care, because it's very hard work.
I don't think you make it through the training.
No,
if you
I don't think you would make it through the training at all. If you,
I think that's when you go and get the fast food job and say, would you like me to supersize that?
Yeah.
That's when you don't care. But how do you personally, when you're in that fear space and thinking, oh no, how do you get past that?
I think I just recognize that that's what's going on, that I'm hearing these judgments, and it's just like, you know, radio crazy or whatever I called it before.
Right.
Like it's this like pitter patter of my brain, and then it's about, I just make room for that and have to do it anyway, and it's like forcing myself to do it and realizing that I don't have to react on what's going on in my head. And the thing is, if I do act on what's going on in my head, I might escape that anxiety right now, but in the long run it's not moving me towards what I really value, and what I really value is making a difference to these kids' lives and doing a worthwhile job and feeling fulfilled as a person and learning and becoming more experienced and so on.
I think that's wonderful. I know for me, I am learning that from all of you, that if I get into the action of something, then it kind of quiets all that other mess that's going on in the head. To just get into the action.
Because you're basically contacting the real contingencies in the environment. So instead of, you know, following some rules that are in your head that are not really reality, they're just in your brain, you're actually acting so that you're kind of contacting the bigger picture, and then you can get reinforced for your behavior there.
Yeah. We should mention, again, because you brought up the reality gap, and we should mention that book again and what it's about.
Yeah, it's a book for, I mean, it's not just for parents, it's for anybody, but I think it speaks really well to parents and for parents of children with autism. And it's by Russ Harris, and it's called The Reality Gap, and he actually has a child with autism, and he wrote this book very much. He talks a lot about his experiences and how he coped with having his child with autism. And the other thing to know about him is that he's actually an ACT therapist, an ACT doctor. That's acceptance commitment therapy, and that's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's based on behavior analysis and a theory called relational frame theory. So it's ABA based, and it makes sense, and there's lots of research to show that it's very effective with a whole range of different problems, but it really just helps you deal better with difficult thoughts and feelings, and this kind of, whenever something kind of slaps you in the face out of the blue, like having your child diagnosed or something, and how to get through that.
Yeah, because it is. I don't know a single person that hasn't felt like it's a lot more than a hiccup in your life, a lot more than a hiccup. And I love that now we're starting to talk about not just what the journey is for the child, but what the journey is like for the family, for the parents and for the family, because if it takes a team to work with a child, there should be an expectation that it's going to have the ripple effect, and that we start to cope with that as well. I think maybe that's a byproduct of the fact that more and more people are starting to get the help that we can, because for so long it was just so detrimental, and not enough families were getting access to the help, so you couldn't even move on to some of the other issues that were going on. I hope that's a measure of how well we're starting to be able to acknowledge the issue, that we're seeing that there's more than just the behaviors that the child is going through, but there are a whole lot of things in the family.
I mean, I think that some of it's also to do with people realizing we really have to, or more of an emphasis on we have to get parents more involved, and what does that mean? And if more and more children get diagnosed, we can't just concentrate just on the children, because those children are within families, and also it's going to be much more resource effective if we can help parents to help their kids better.
Absolutely.
And part of that is helping themselves to feel better and to function better and to have a better quality of life as a whole family.
Absolutely. And which is why we love having you to come in. This has been a wonderful hour. I've so enjoyed being here with you. I know we've got to get you back to things, things that you have to do. But thank you again, the fabulous Evelyn Gould, BCBA. And if you have have questions for Evelyn, you can still continue to write them in and email them in, and she'll be back next Wednesday at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson will be joining me, and guess who our special guest is today? Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. We need to take some time. We got to talking about this, and I said, you know, Nancy, you are such a powerful person. She speaks on empowerment for parents all around the country, and so we're going to step outside her box a little bit this week, and I'm going to be interviewing Nancy. So you won't want to miss it. I promise you, she is an amazing person who's going to help all of us to feel more empowered so that we can be more efficient, more effective working with our kids on the spectrum, and they will reach their full potential. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Monique Erickson. I'm a senior supervisor here at CARD in the training department.
Playdates are so hard with kids on the spectrum. What kinds of things would you recommend to get a really good playdate?
So you want to prepare, just trying to find things that, one, your child's going to be successful with, and two, things that they'll both enjoy. You want to look for things that they have to do together. You don't want necessarily this play date to be, you know, a period of time where there's isolated play happening. It kind of defeats the purpose of that. You can do isolated play alone in your sessions. You're looking for some interactive play during this play date or some generalization of the skills that your kid has been working on.
Do you have any suggestions for requesting a play date? Like who we should ask? What type of child?
Playdates are really interesting. There's a lot of things that go into that you want to think about when you're doing a playdate. Sometimes there are really great kids who don't really necessarily make great playdates, and there's just lots of reasons for that. It depends on what type of kid you have and what you're trying to work on, and then what peer is going to best complement that and allow you to do what you need to do in a playdate. What I have found is sometimes you need a kid who's more open and flexible and willing to do the things that you want to do. If they're a little too independent or too set in their ways about doing what they had on their agenda, it kind of hinders what you need to accomplish in your play date. So sometimes you have going in, you think, oh, this is going to be a great kid. They play on the playground. He really likes her or him. This is going to be a really good thing for him. And then you get them into the house for the play date, and 10 minutes into it, you realize there's no way the peer is going to do what you want them to do or need them to do. So you just kind of chalk it up and you note to yourself, okay, not the best play date, and then you have a better idea of what you're looking for in the next kid. I think that you're going to want someone who's a child who's open and flexible and willing to go with the flow, patient, because maybe you're asking them to repeat what they've said a few times so that our child has opportunity to respond to peers, and you're getting an opportunity in a smaller environment to slow things down for a second for them so that they have an opportunity to hear what the peer said and respond. And you may be asking the friend can you say that again? I don't think he heard you. You definitely need a peer who's willing to do that. I've been told no by kids. No, I'm not going to do that. And so when you have that happen, you just realize, okay, this isn't the best fit, and you just move on and you find a better fit for your child.
What would you recommend that we say to other parents about our child before a play date?
I think that's going to depend on your child and the severity of the deficits that you have that you're working on at that point, and the parents that you're dealing with. There's lots of different personalities that we encounter in working with different families and so forth. I think that honesty is probably the best policy, but that doesn't mean you have to divulge every little detail about your child and what you're working on. You could give them, if it was appropriate, something general, just like, my child has some delays in language and social, and we have found that by doing these play dates, it's been really helpful in helping them improve on these areas. If there's some deficits that are more probably obvious and to the parent, you might need to get into some more specifics about why there's an adult in there facilitating that and so forth. But I think being honest, but you don't have to divulge every little detail. But I think they have a right to know why there's another person in there, if there's someone else in there besides yourself facilitating.
What kind of strategies are good for getting children to play together instead of playing side by side?
Things that have turn-taking opportunities with them. If they're boys and they're into sports, maybe, tossing a ball back and forth, if that's something your child has been working on. You want to kind of stay away from just playing on the playscape, for example, and they're both on the swings, but no one's talking, and they're just kind of hanging out next to each other, but they're not really doing a whole lot, unless that happens to be where you're starting. You know, maybe your first target in these play dates is parallel play, and if that's the case, then that might be okay. Otherwise, you're going to want to look for some more interactive activities that they can play.
What about after the play date? What kinds of things should we do after a play date?
I think no matter what we're doing with our kids, it's always a good idea to stop and reflect. Okay, how did that go? Did I do what I said I was going to do? Did we hit the targets we were supposed to work on? If not, why? You know, was it because I didn't plan the activities correctly, or was it like, hey, I didn't realize, but he's actually doing much better with that than I thought, and so maybe that wasn't the right target. It just kind of, once he got the opportunity, it happened more than you thought it was going to be. You know, you never know. You're just making a plan, and you implement it the best you can, and then you stop. After it's done, you should reflect and go, how did that go? Is there anything I could have done different? The activities were wrong. Was the play date the right kind of kid that I needed for this to happen? Was it too long? Was it perfect? Did they need a snack and I ran them into the ground with all these activities I structured? And you know, it could be something like that. So I always think it's a good idea to take a step back and reflect. Reinforce the child for what you thought was great, you know, right after, so it's fresh in their mind. Oh, that was really great. I liked the way you played with Sally outside. That was really nice. You know, if they're at a more advanced level in their treatment program, you could, you know, talk about some of the things and have them identify what they liked and so forth. Early on, you're probably just going to reinforce them, and then you take note of what you might need to do differently.
How do you deal with challenging behavior on a play date?
Well, that could go two ways. I have definitely been in a situation where there's challenging behavior on my child's part, and there's also been situations where it wasn't my child. Our play date was having some difficulties, and so I think there's two different things we could talk about. First, looking at our child, you know, you probably have some ideas of what behavioral challenges might pop up during those situations, so you should kind of have an idea going in. Okay, if this gets too stressful and he starts to do this, what is going to be your plan? I think you're going to try to de-escalate that if you can. If you see the signs coming, or whoever's facilitating this play date sees that he's starting to get a little fidgety and agitated, and that generally happens before a tantrum or something of that nature, then you're going to try to de-escalate and see if you can calm him down so that it doesn't turn into a full-blown tantrum or meltdown in front of their peers. And that's the last thing we want, is for, we're trying to build social relationships here, so we don't want that happening. If it's just not going to happen and that escalates to a point where you can't calm them down in that situation, I think the best thing you can do is probably have the parent or whoever, another person, handle the child that's having the difficulty, our child, and then distract the peer who's there at that point. Like, oh, you know, he's going to take a moment to make himself feel better, and let's keep playing. Oh, do you like this game? This is a really fun game. Let's see what we can do here. And just try to distract him from that moment, and let our child get a moment to kind of just regroup and pull himself back together. And as far as the other child, that poses some definite difficulties. You know, when the peer comes and isn't having a great time, you think you just need to take it one step at a time, take a step back, do what you can to de-escalate and redirect that behavior to something hopefully that's usable and helpful during the play date. And if not, then you go to plan B, you write out the play date and hopefully go to something else, and just note to yourself that maybe that's not the best play date for the future.
Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nancy.
And normally when we're here, we have all kinds of topics in the news that we talk about, and we have a guest that comes in.
Yes.
But we wanted to change things up a little bit today because you are such a wonderful resource, and I talk on the show all the time about the fact that you amaze me. You absolutely amaze me, and you go around the world and you give a talk that empowers parents. I'm going to get emotional already.
Oh, you're so sweet.
And our audience should not be penalized from this information because you happen to co-host. And so I had asked you if you would come in and give them a little bit of the kinds of things that you talk about in your talk, because we all need some empowerment. And one of the things that we do here, we say that people can't always get to these conferences.
No, they can't.
And we want to give them access. So
absolutely.
So they deserve access to you.
Yeah, and you know what, Shannon? It was a conference 7 years ago that changed my life, changed the course of my life. And at that conference, and I'm going to talk about this in a little while, I heard Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, the founder and president of Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and also of Act Today, the founder of Act Today, and it changed my life, literally. My life took on a whole new direction that I never would have dreamed a long time ago. So anyway, we're going to talk about, you want me to share what I share with parents when I go to autism conferences around the country.
And one of the first things that you do when you're there in front of the parents is that you congratulate them and tell them that they are all activists. What are you talking about when you say that they're all activists? Okay, well, I think a lot of us have heard the term autism warrior mom or warrior dad. You know, it applies to both. But I like to call autism parents activists because it sounds like Act Today, and I give them a coffee mug at my speech that says I'm an activist because just by being there, and I believe everybody listening today, by the way, is an activist because you are making a positive difference in the life of someone with autism, be it your own child or someone else's that maybe you work in the field. You're all activists. I truly believe that. But it's that ripple effect, that first step as a parent. Just by listening to this show and by listening to Autism Live and by doing everything you do for your child, you really are an activist because you're taking that step to make a positive difference. And it is a ripple effect. And I want to say that I really want everybody at home listening to acknowledge themselves, to give themselves credit for being an activist, because I truly believe we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we do in our lives. And not everybody is going to be a public figure. Not everybody is going to run an organization, but the most important things you do start at home. Charity starts at home. Helping your own child, you always say it on this show, is the first step. So that's what I mean about being an activist. Absolutely, and I love the fact that it includes everybody because, you know, and I've shared before that there was a period of time when I was at home in the sweatpants with the holes and then with my hair, you know, completely messier than it is now. And you were one of the people that I looked up to then and that I saw, wow, you know, look at what she's doing, and it made me stand a little taller, Nancy. You know, so you've always been somebody that empowered. But when you start out your speech, you say, you know, you haven't always been in this space. And you even share a very personal part of your
I'm going to read.
Okay, cool.
It's a very personal part that I wrote when my son was just under 3. And just to show parents that I've been where they're at, because I truly have been there on the floor, on my knees, saying, what am I going to do? So I read this entry, which it resonates with almost everybody that comes to my speeches. Okay,
I'm getting the tissue now.
Get the tissue because you'll. Who is this child spinning in circles like a whirling dervish, lining up toys, refusing to eat? Who's this child who walked and talked early, now barely talks, just stares into space? Who's this child who was so happy, now he only screams and cries? He's my son. I don't know what's happening to him, and I'm terrified. His violent tantrums are getting worse, and I feel like a battered wife who won't admit there's a monster in the house. Not a grown man, but my 2.5-year-old son. Like a domestic violence victim, I hide the telltale signs. I've been covering up the scratches and bite marks with makeup. My friend tells me her son behaved so badly at 2 that they nicknamed him Damien, and she snapped him out of his tantrums by squirting him in the face with a water bottle. It sounded cruel, but I was desperate. One day we're alone when the tantrum begins, and I decided to run to the kitchen cabinet and grab it, squirting Wyatt in the face. He becomes enraged, runs through the house, and grabs everything he can reach, smashing glass. He runs for the door. I catch him before he can open it and drag him across the room. He starts flailing his arms, pulling my hair and scratching me. His strength is astounding for such a small child. I pull him into my lap, getting his hands under control, and he starts head-butting me and biting my shoulders. Stop it, stop it, stop it. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs as he's wailing like a hurt animal. Can the neighbors hear us? Hyperventilating, I hold on to him until he calms down. We're soaked with water, tears, and blood. scratch marks and bites all over my arms and chest. Wyatt's own arms bitten and bleeding. Why has my nightmare of having a baby to love, why has my dream of having a baby to love turned into such a nightmare? What is happening to my little boy? I sit on the floor of the living room crying, rocking him in my arms, and I pray, God, if you help me find out what this thing is that has taken my child and help him, I swear I will do anything you need me to do. Just give me the answers.
Wow. Really powerful and honest, and amazing to me because you've gone from there to being somebody who does help, and that, you know, you have made a difference in this world as a result.
You know, it was a very short time after that that my neighbor, my next door neighbor, suggested Wyatt might have autism. He was almost 3. And there are many mysteries in this story, as we all have mysteries in our life stories. The mystery to me at that point was, why in the world did my 3-year-old son, why did it take a neighbor to tell me she thought he had autism when he had been going to preschool? We had been in a mommy and me class, and he had also gone by himself to preschool. He had been in speech therapy, and no one ever brought up the A word. No one. Not the speech therapist, not the preschool teachers. They did tell me they thought he might need a shadow because he was having some bad behaviors, which I obliged. The pediatrician said, let's put him into speech therapy. But the behaviors were so, I often say a trained chimpanzee could have diagnosed my son when he was 2. Okay. Right after that, my neighbor says that she thinks he might have autism. And I take him into the pediatrician. And initially he scoffed, and he said, autism is the latest trendy disease of soccer moms. And of course I was relieved. And I want to point out that I was 46 years old. No, I was 48 at this point. Wyatt was adopted. And I didn't know what children did. I had no reference. I had never changed a diaper. I mean, I hate to sound like an idiot, but I didn't know anything about babies. And, you know, so I thought maybe terrible twos, whatever. So, but, you know, the biggest thing that has changed from that day to today for me, and what I want all parents to hear that are listening, is that I have a philosophy that it wasn't actually originally mine. Your disability is your opportunity. I want parents to think about that. Your disability is your opportunity. Now, you're a living example of that. I talk about people in my speech that have done this, that have turned something around that other people might think of as a curse and made it a blessing, made it a life's calling. And I truly believe that all of us, which with special needs children, are chosen.
I agree.
We're chosen. Now, my brother, my younger brother, who's passed away, David Alspaugh, had Down syndrome. And I'm very lucky that my parents raised me with a belief that he was a blessing. And my husband often says to me, well, you had a lot of preparation for having a child with autism because you had a brother with Down syndrome. I actually think that was not a plus when Wyatt was young, because I didn't want to have to go through what my mother went through. I was fearful of that. So even when Wyatt was 2, my mother said to me, something's wrong, because he was starting to bite and have tantrums, and I was angry at her, and I said, you just want him to be, something to be wrong with him, like, because you wanted me to be like you. And I lashed out at her. But I do believe your disability is your opportunity. It takes a while to get to that place. First, we have to go through the acceptance, the anger. We all have levels of denial.
Absolutely.
All of us. Some get through it quicker than others, but we all have it. So once you get through the anger, the denial, then get to acceptance, I want us all to get to a place of embracing and saying, why me? Why not? Why me? Maybe because I have the special set of skills to handle this. So your disability is your opportunity was first coined by Kurt Hahn, who invented Outward Bound, that outdoor adventure program, which I did. And it really teaches you to deal with adversity. And I believe our greatest people in the world, you look at them, Helen Keller, Mother Teresa, Oprah Winfrey. You know, people, when Oprah first came on the scene, everybody was like, well, who is this black woman, overweight black woman to host a TV show? Well, she showed him, didn't she?
Yes, she sure
She wasn't
did.
cookie cutter. So not being cookie cutter is a good thing.
Yeah.
And every parent has something in them with this disability, with this this diagnosis of autism for their child, that they can do to make the world a better place.
Absolutely.
So I really believe that.
That's a great place. We're going to take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, we're going to have Nancy explain to us how you went from that moment on the floor to being the executive director of Autism Care and Treatment today and making such a difference in so many lives. So stick with us. We're on a journey to empowerment.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh-Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team, as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools, and summer camps. Medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets. Basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander. Assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, ACT for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
ACT Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received a grant, which was like a blessing from above.
ACT Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're here right now with the wonderful Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. You just saw a clip about Autism Care and Treatment Today and their initiative for military families, and very proud to be talking to you today about this talk that you give about a journey to empowerment and taking a look at where you are now and what you've accomplished. You guys are on the threshold of crossing a really big a big marker.
We are. It's going to be a big milestone for us. This week we're giving out $35,000 in grants, and that will take us to $1 million in dollars given out in the last 4 years to families since I've been executive director to families battling autism. And I just want to say, if you're one of the families who's applied and maybe you have not gotten a grant, there would be nothing that would make me happier than if we could raise enough funds to give every single family that applies. Because I think they're all deserving, and it breaks my heart when we can't give them. But I'm so proud of my staff, and Amy Zhang and Laura Marquand and Daphne Plump, who help me every day in getting, and Caitlin Fullerton, our grants intern, who's been working with you and me on this program. So I'm so happy to do that. But we were talking before about the long journey to get to where I am today.
And I think we need to back up a little bit because, you know, it was a battle for you even to become a parent.
Absolutely. That was part of the battle. You know, I call my speech Waiting for Wyatt. I do believe he was destined to be mine, but it was a huge journey. And I'm going to go back to 1992. And that was a decade before autism came into my life. But at that point, I was newly married to my second husband. And my first marriage, we did not have children. We both were very into our careers. And we just loved our careers. We put our careers more important than each other. So
and very high-flying careers. We'll say that.
Very high-flying.
Very high-flying careers
I don't
for
mind.
both of you.
You know, once you said you talk about it, I don't mind saying that I was once married to Matt Lauer for 7 years, and he's gone on to have a remarkable life. But I've gone on to have my own remarkable life.
Yes, you have.
So yeah, he hosts a little morning show, in case you didn't know it, the Today Show.
But you were also
a big television producer. Well, I guess I would say, you know, I was living my dream of producing national shows. At the time, in 1992, I was producing Lisa Gibbons' talk show, and for Paramount. And at that point, I met my wonderful second husband and last husband, current husband, Reed Jackson. And I was working 80 hours a week in television, and we were trying to have a child. So I was like, gotta get pregnant, you know. And one day, Reed asked me to come to the urologist with him. I thought it was kind of odd, and he said, you know, he thinks he's found out why we can't get pregnant. So I was like, great. So we go in. And I remember being in the waiting room and seeing all of these old men with canes, and I'm thinking, we don't belong here, you know. And we were called into the doctor's office, and it's, you know those memories, Shannon, that are etched forever? You remember every little detail. Well, I remember sitting there, and I remember he had Dr. Kubler-Ross on Death and Dying on the bookshelf behind his head. Nice. And I remember his little pens in his pocket, and, you know, with the pharmaceutical companies. And I remember him looking at me and saying, well, there's good news and there's bad news. I'll start with the bad news. We found cancer. Reed has prostate cancer, and even though it's it's a very bad situation, we found it early, and all you hear at that point is blah 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 blah, because you're stuck back on the your husband has cancer, and you're thinking, is he going to die? You know, that's where you're stuck.
Absolutely.
So then he goes on to say, now I know you're trying to start a family, and now, you know, biologically, in order to do that, you'll have to do in vitro fertilization, because once we remove the prostate, he'll no longer be able to produce sperm, and blah, 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 blah. And so I'm seeing my whole life blown up. Like, completely. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. My husband has cancer. We're not going to be able to have a child the way most people do. We're going to have to freeze his sperm before he has a radical prostatectomy. And then I'm going to have to go through infertility. So we walked out of there. I think we drove to Malibu and got drunk on margaritas and made a list of things we were going to do. Because to me, action. I'm always an action-oriented person. So first thing was see the infertility doctor in Beverly Hills that was world famous. So we go to see him. He found a cyst on my ovaries, endometriosis. I took Reed's surgery date at Cedars, got that taken care of. Then Reed had his radical prostatectomy. It's all kind of a blur when I think back on it. Then we started infertility treatments. Went through those. They didn't work. Then we decided, well, let's look at adoption. So we got an adoption attorney. We were picked right away. And we brought in a young couple from Arkansas. Took them out to dinner, put them up in an apartment to get to know them. She was about to give birth in about 2 weeks. We took them out to dinner and found out, go ahead, get some water.
Excuse me.
Found out that
you choked me up so much.
The birth father had been beaten and abused and had been in psychiatric hospitals. They reeked of cigarettes. There were many things. And you know what? I hope in hindsight, I pray that baby was fine, and I'm sure it probably was. But we decided, okay, let's go back to try more infertility. So then we went back and tried an egg donor. And there was a beautiful young woman who had had several children who donated her eggs to me. That time I was sure I was pregnant. No, I wasn't. So that was a big disappointment. We even went to orphanages in Mexico. This is how much I wanted to have a child, okay? To me, it was never about getting pregnant and being biologically giving birth. It was about giving a child a chance. I think even as a young girl, I had dreams of adopting.
Wow.
So went to Mexico. I found out no way can you get children out of Mexico. It's almost impossible.
Really?
It's very difficult. That's why you don't see many children adopted from Mexico here. Okay, then I get a call from the adoption attorney. He says, would you take a Hispanic baby? And I'm like, of course we would. So about a week after that, I'm on a plane to meet this young woman. I'll call her Monica. I won't use her real name. I'll never forget her sitting across from me. We went out to lunch, and she held my hand, and she said, I want a woman like you to be the mother of this baby. I don't want her to have a life like mine. She had already had 3 children. Her husband had been injured, supposedly, in a car crash. She had gotten pregnant by a brief affair. I was supposed to go see the ultrasound. We went to the clinic. She came over to me and said, she went up to the desk, she came back to me and she said, the doctor had been called out on an emergency delivery. He could not show us the ultrasound, but she had a great idea. Let's go to Babies R Us. We'll get one of those baby monitors and I'll let you listen to the heartbeat.
Oh, Nancy.
So we go, we get the baby monitor. I call Reed at work on my cell phone. I say, listen, we knew it was going to be a girl. I said, it's our baby girl. It's Francesca. We had called her. I had decorated the nursery, which they tell you not to do. And I let him listen to the heartbeat. But Shannon, that heartbeat was not a baby girl's. It was Monica's. She was a scam artist.
Wow.
A very effective scam artist.
Wow.
And she had found the perfect victim, me.
Yeah, because you were in a place where you wanted
I would believe anything.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Okay, so I discovered that after I left her our rental car because I didn't want her taking the bus.
Right.
She said, can I take the rental car? I'll take you to the airport. I said, yeah, take it. Keep it for a week or so. Get groceries. Do whatever you need. Gave her a big check to, get groceries and to pay her rent, da-da-da-da-da. Get back home, and suddenly it was difficult to reach her.
Yeah.
And then it all started to add up, and I did what I should have done in the beginning. I called a private investigator that I knew. Within 10 minutes, he called me back, and he said, your Monica she was pregnant 3 months ago. She's just overweight. And she's probably doing this all over the place. And you're lucky you went down there because she was living with a very bad guy who was in a gang. Who anyway, long story short, giant scam.
Wow.
I was completely devastated, and I had given up all hope of having a child when on 9/11, 2001, I'm watching as the World Trade Center collapses. And the phone rings, and it's the adoption center secretary, a very sweet girl, Karen, and she says, a new birth mother has come in. And I said, do you see what's happening right now? None of us may be alive tomorrow. And she said, I really feel this is different, this one. And Shannon, right at that moment, I had chills. I looked back at the screen. The second tower collapsed. I thought of all those families that all those parents who would never come home again, all those children that would never see their families, never be told a bedtime story, never be given a bath, never be held again, all those little everyday moments that we take for granted that I could still do if I just kept trying.
Yeah.
So I went. Ironically enough, this young birth mother was also from Phoenix, where the other one was from. Went to meet her. She was absolutely beautiful, wonderful 19-year-old girl who had gotten pregnant by her high school boyfriend before, didn't know, and they had broken up. We brought her here, and she gave birth to our son Wyatt on 11/9, 2 months later.
Wow.
And From that day, I always had a feeling he was destined to change the world. You know, when you think of that, maybe you think, oh, your child's going to become president, or your child's going to, you know, be the biggest, you know, basketball star or whatever.
Right.
But he's changing the world in a different way.
Yeah.
Because he changed my path.
Yeah.
His autism was a catalyst for me. He's really the inspiration for everything I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he is such a blessing. It's been a long journey, but he's better every day. I want everybody to know that he is 10. He is doing really well. He's gone from moderately autistic to high functioning with a lot of help. But that journey was tough because, as I said, at 3, at almost 3, he was not diagnosed. We had plenty of, the symptoms were all there. He was lining up toys, he was watching things repetitively, he was switching off lights, he was having massive tantrums 6, 7, 8 times a day, problems sleeping, not eating anything but, you know, dairy, Cheez-Its, and so the signs were all there, but even as early as 7 years ago, people just weren't that educated, were they?
Yeah. No, it's amazing how much things have changed.
Right.
But I have to say, we should take a break.
Okay, and then we'll come back to how I got him help.
Yeah, how you got him help and how you got to that empowerment from this journey.
And then I've got some steps for other parents.
Yes, absolutely, because we all need to learn from you. I mean, to have gone through that, Nancy, and then get the child of your dreams.
And then he gets diagnosed with autism.
Yeah. And still to find the empowerment. This is why I tell you guys, this is the lady we need to be following. So stick with us. We're going to be back with more with Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, our journey to empowerment. We'll be right back.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings. Military families impacted by autism wage a battle on 2 fronts. One for their country and another for their children.
I know your God knows we're in a battle zone. Well, I'm fighting the war back here, and I'm fighting it all alone.
With 1 in 88 military children diagnosed with autism, the families face extraordinary challenges. But there is hope. With intensive treatment, the lives of children with autism and their families can be changed. You can make a difference.
We've all been waiting for.
To learn how you can help a military child with autism, go to acttodayformilitaryfamilies.org. Thank you.
Maybe tomorrow.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And Nancy is sharing with us right now. She does a talk around the world that if you want her to come and speak to your group, I'm sure that can be arranged.
Absolutely. You can contact me at nancy@act-today.org.
And I said, you know, we really were kind of cheating our audience that we haven't had you give part of this talk to us. So we're going over some of the high points and the low points. But there's certainly much more when you have her come and speak. But her talk is Waiting for Wyatt, The Journey to Empowerment. And so you were sharing with us how long it took for you to, and the struggle for you to become a mom. And then, of course, you have this child and you see that there are things that aren't adding up. You went to the pediatrician and
he finally says he's at least a year delayed. He didn't say autism.
Right.
And he referred me to a place that diagnoses. And I went to that place and they gave him some of the testing. And they said, we think he might be on the spectrum. And when I said, I want to know what signs you see, they really didn't want to get into it with me. And I said, you know, I don't think you're really the place for me. And then somebody told me about the school district. We are in the Las Virgenes school district. So I called them. They came and assessed him. And I think based primarily on a lot of my denial, they diagnosed him with whatchamacallit, PDD-NOS.
Which was our word for the day, our jargon word for the day today.
Oh, was it?
It was, yes.
Okay.
So how timely is that?
They diagnosed him with PDD-NOS, I think primarily because in the parent interview, I'm like, oh, he's doing so great. And, you know, he smiles, he laughs, you know, he shows emotion. He doesn't... All I knew about autism really was toe walking and hand flapping, of which he did neither one. He did everything else.
Right.
But so he had in all three categories, you know, repetitive behaviors, social issues, and communication issues. He had all of those. So anyway, I was relieved, PDD-NOS. They put him in a preschool mixed with neurotypical children and children with autism. And he's in there for about a year, and he's not getting better. He's getting worse.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And I'm trying to learn everything I can on the internet. I used to call, I put a sign up, Autism Central, over my little office at home.
Yeah.
And I would stagger out every night, you know, at 1 a.m. and crawl into bed and say to my husband, if it's this hard for me, a former television producer with, I thought, connections to anything, what's it like for the mom with 5 kids, you know, that works 2 jobs? I always thought of the checkout clerk at Ralph's because I love them so much. They're so cheerful.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, what is it like for her if she has a kid with autism?
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, one day maybe I can do something. That was always in the back of my mind. So anyway, I opened up the LA Times one day, and it had what used to be called the Dan Conference, and it said, you know, Defeat Autism Now Conference in Long Beach. I went to it. And the first speaker was a brilliant doctor by the name of Andrew Levinson. They call him Yogi, MD. He's out of Miami, and he works with children on the spectrum. And the second speaker was a woman named Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. And she gave a whole presentation about a therapy called ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis, and how it was not only improving the lives of children with autism, but recovering them. Okay.
In some cases.
In some cases.
We should
in
make
some
sure that
cases.
we say that. Not in all cases, but in some
generally
cases.
in every case where the family stuck with it, improvements.
Absolutely.
Across the board.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking, okay, my son is 4. He's been diagnosed at 3, late. I have never heard this term used.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this ABA therapy. Why?
Yeah.
I called my husband, and after hearing these 2 doctors, I said, finally, something makes sense.
Yeah.
Dr. Levinson said these children can be improved by boosting their immune systems, detoxifying, helping them in many ways. You know, not for everybody once again, but the diet, GFCF diet, if you want to try it, you know, we did. It helped our son immediately. There were other things we tried that were known as biomedical that helped him. I was very interested in this ABA.
Yeah.
So I started calling CARD. And there were waiting lists.
Yeah.
Long waiting lists.
Yeah.
So that journey began. And then around the day that I found out, it was almost, I hate to say it, almost a year later, that we found out that he had qualified for the therapy. I got a postcard in the mail, probably because we were now in the CARD system, from ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, which had just been started, saying, if you can help us fundraise by giving a backyard barbecue for children that need help. And I thought, you know, I can do a little backyard barbecue. I called Lisa Gibbons and Tom Bergeron and people that I worked with in television. I invited about 500 people, and we raised about $30,000.
Which is amazing to me, because I think I probably got that same postcard of like, barbecue? Like, I can't even get a meal on the table. You want me to have a barbecue in the backyard? But you invited Lisa Gibbons and Tom Bergeron and raised $50,000. You know, I just want to say, you know, that's how you are amazing.
Well, I find it seemed to me like it was a calling. I often say that I didn't choose this path, it chose me, and I really believe that. And my son was getting better because of this therapy. I saw immediate improvement. So I thought, wow, if this is happening, and you know what I found out, Shannon? That the more I helped other people, the better he got.
I think we all, you know, anybody who's done anything, whether it's small or big, we all discover that.
It's the law of karma. Now, Emily, you have some video of Wyatt when he was, I think, 3, that I just want to see, I want people to see how he was, because I think it will be. It's kind of shocking to see what my little boy, how bad off he was. Okay, this is him, just typical. Okay, this is like a day with Wyatt. This is him at 2.5, maybe close to 3. And you'll see, I'm in the room. He doesn't even know I'm there, okay? Doesn't know I'm there. This is how his activity level, isn't he beautiful?
He is beautiful. His
activity level at all times, his connection was about like this, okay? He doesn't have a clue Mommy's in the room. He's throwing himself, you see how he's seeking that pressure. He is totally hyperactive. He's not making any connections. He's flinging himself around. You know, he just, that's what he was like 24/7.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that people don't always realize is that, you know, you can show a clip of any child and there might be that moment after a birthday party.
But he was like that all the time.
All the time. Right. And how unrelenting, you know, it's bedtime, it's time to eat, it's time to, you know, watch a video or something that it's time to be in the bath, that they're like that all the time.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So he got better, and I then started doing this fundraising. Doreen, Dr. Grandpichet, came to me and said, whoa, you can really fundraise, and would you like to be on our board? So my husband and I joined the board of Act Today, and then a short time later, they were looking for a part-time executive director, and I took on that job, except it wasn't part-time.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked back. It's been... And there are days I get discouraged. There are days I get discouraged. But you know what, Shannon? When I get the applications and, you know, a parent is saying, we're applying for an iPad because my child is nonverbal.
Yeah.
If they could type the words, I love you.
Yeah.
It would make the world of difference.
Yeah.
I'm looking for therapy, ABA, for grandparents who were looking for ABA therapy for their grandson before they passed away, so they could make sure he knew how to dress himself and was potty trained at the age of 13. These are heartbreaking stories, and you realize there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Yeah. But this week you've made $1 million worth of difference.
Yes, $1 million worth of difference.
That's absolutely, and your work is not done.
No,
you know, but $1 million worth of difference should be celebrated.
Yeah. And we are. And I want to give some steps.
Yes, I want to know how we can ride your coattails and suck some of your energy and empower ourselves. So tell us what to do, Nancy.
The first thing I'm going to do is give you the empowerment prayer. Or Emily, are you on the steps first or the prayer first? Okay, let's put the prayer up.
Okay.
Oh, that's my rap. Never mind. Take that down. Okay, let me give you the empowerment prayer, and I can send this to you if you write us. It's God grant me the wisdom, whoever God you worship. I'm always clear to say that. God grant me the wisdom to see disability as an opportunity, the courage to love my child unconditionally, and the faith to live a life of purpose.
Wow.
Okay.
Read it again.
God grant me the wisdom to see disability as an opportunity, the courage to love my child unconditionally, and the faith to live a life of purpose. Okay.
Fabulous.
And here are my 10 steps to empowerment, which I think Emily has and she can put up.
Okay.
Okay. We talked about accept and embrace this challenge. Now, when I say accept, I mean, you know, denial, we're all going to go through it, but we need to get to acceptance fairly quickly. When I say embrace, I don't mean loving autism.
Right.
I hate autism. It stole my it stole his childhood.
Yeah.
But I embrace that he has it, because if I don't embrace it, I will be stuck in denial, and it keeps me from walking a path I ultimately have to walk.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's what I mean by embracing. And by embracing it, we find a power within ourselves that I think we never knew we had.
Absolutely.
So number 2, educate yourself. This is so important. And we're so lucky today. We have the University of Google, you know, and you can learn so much. And, you know, just think of the moms. It's really shocking to think as recently as 40 years ago that kids were still being diagnosed and mothers were being blamed with refrigerator mother syndrome. And think of the mothers that went to their grave thinking they were the cause of their child's autism. So we've come a long way. We've got a lot way longer to go. But educate yourself, because there's a lot of knowledge out there, and we're learning more every day about this epidemic.
Absolutely.
Okay. Number 3 is get support. So important.
So essential.
They can get the support by watching you every day. They can watch Autism Live.
Absolutely.
You're not alone. They can listen to radio programs like your show.
Absolutely. And there are many other radio programs too.
Right.
Support is there.
It is there. TACA. My friend Lisa Ackerman, I'm in the UN of autism orgs. I believe in we all can work together and talk about curing autism. They have mentors. Get yourself a mentor. I wish I had done that. I didn't know about it. I would have. That's what I would do immediately if I had a child diagnosed. And I love this quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has.
Absolutely.
You know, one can be alone. When you have 2, you can have strength. And when you have more than 2, you can be a movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's great. Number 4 is very important because it's something that I need to read every day. Don't compare. Run your own race.
This is so important in autism.
I have got to tell you that sometimes there have been days where I look at people that have recovered children and I'm green with envy. And I think, why not me? Why not Wyatt? But you know, we're all here on our own path. And there's always somebody worse.
Yes.
Always.
Always.
And your child is your child. Love them for who they are. And your path is your path. Love them for who they are. And I also want to say that recovering your child to any level, we're all recovering our children because we're all making our children better. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm a runner. So let me tell you that when I run a marathon, I pace myself. There are times that I'm going to run a marathon in 5.5 hours. There are other times I'm going to run it in 4.5. But I can't compare myself to the 20-year-old that's going to run it in 3.
Right.
It's just we all have our own pace. So pace yourself accordingly.
Wonderful.
Number 5, shore up spiritually. Okay. Now, by this, I do not mean necessarily organized religion, although for some people that's what works. I go to a church that if I did not have it, I don't know what I'd do. I go to Prince of Peace Episcopal Church. My minister, Father Rand, is amazing. He has helped me so much by praying with me. But for some people, their spirituality is found in nature, you know? But take the time, whatever it is, a temple, a church, a forest, go out and spend time with yourself. Spend time with your higher power, and it's going to really help you. And I think in most cases we find God in our fellow man, you know. And I think that that's just so important to give yourself that spiritual sustenance as well.
Absolutely.
Number 6, recognize your gifts and abilities. Because those gifts and abilities are going to be very important in taking you along this journey. And if you don't think you're talented, you know, get in touch with me and I'll find your talent, because I can guarantee you are. Ask the people you love. What's my talent? They'll tell you. And for some of us, it's cooking the perfect brownie, baking the perfect brownie. For some of us, it's things that are... They're not earth-shattering, but they're gifts nonetheless.
Absolutely.
And everybody has gifts.
Absolutely.
So recognize those and give yourself credit. Number 7, we've talked a lot about this today as a theme. Live in gratitude and give back. Karma works. It does. And the greatest gift we can give ourselves is giving to others. I believe that.
I believe that too.
Number 8, state your intention. This is really important. Live in a state of knowing your child will get better. Live in a state of knowing that you will accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish. Put it out there. I put it up on my desk. You know, I put Post-its of what I want.
Wonderful.
The number 1 thing was helping my child, that I've always said. He's number 1. Helping other families was my number 2. You know.
And look at the way that you found to do that. It's kind of amazing.
It kind of manifests itself, Shannon, and I think you found this too when you said you wanted to be involved in this field. You will be led. Don't worry about the path. Don't worry about the path. Just state your intention. Yeah. And the answers will come. They will manifest. That sounds a little bit woo-woo.
But it was very true for me, too. So
it will. It just works that way. I think when you have a goal, it's like when you drive in a car. Yeah. You don't get in your car and just drive around. You have a destination. Yep. So I think saying, my child will get better. I will help my child get better. My life, my purpose will manifest itself. You know, have a general idea of what you want to do, and you will get there. Yep. Number 9, I think this one is crucial. Trust your intuition. Yeah. No one, and I mean no one, knows what's better for your child than you do.
Absolutely.
There is no expert. There is no doctor. There is no person that knows better than you. Yeah. And if someone judges, you don't need that person.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
You don't need that person. Yeah. Clear it out, because let me tell you, sister, edit those people out of your life, because you got work to do, you've got a life to live, you've got a child to make better, and you don't need the naysayers, you don't need the experts that are this way. I've just said to those people, you know what, thank you for your advice, but I'll be doing it my way.
Exactly.
So just know, trust that inner voice. When you're really conflicted, and I've been conflicted so many times in my life, haven't you? Yes, about what to do, like, oh, do I do this for Wyatt or not? That inner voice, just put it out there, say, please give me the answer. Yeah, absolutely. And it will never steer you wrong. If you've got a gut feeling somebody is not good, then they're not.
Listen to it. Listen to it.
Okay, now this is what I call the Fabulous 3, number 10, and these are really important as well. And they're the L's, the 3 L's. Live in the now, love thyself, and laugh.
Yeah, so important.
Live in the now. I was always so worried about what I was going to be in the future, how my child was going to be in the future. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? They grow up before you know it. I can't believe Wyatt's 10. You and I talk about this all the time. Little boyhood is a fleeting thing.
It's all now.
It's all now. And if you don't love them and love yourself for who you are, you're never going to love yourself in the future, and you're going to only have bad memories. So love yourself now, love your child now, laugh, live in the moment. It's so important. We will not pass this way again.
No, we won't.
This is it.
And speaking of this is it.
Oh, how about the autism rap?
So we got to have the autism rap. Yes, I want to hear what this is.
Okay.
Okay.
I haven't done it in a while, so I might have to, let me see if I can remember it. Okay. Okay. This is the very end of it.
Okay.
So, that you have up on the screen. Okay. Okay. It's just a diagnosis. Your life's not over. Don't lie there like a dog. Get up, Rover. You say your head is spinning with GFCF, ABA, IEPs, and neurofeedback. Autism's tough, that much is true, but you'll survive because you're you. Life's not over, it's just begun, so go out that door and be someone. And at the end of my talk, I make all the parents say, my life's not over, it's just begun. I'm gonna walk out that door and go be someone.
That's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Okay. You are a remarkable person.
Well, thank you. You're a remarkable person. Well, and everybody at home is a remarkable person.
Absolutely, because we're all activists.
We are, we're
activists.
Remind
us that. Yeah. Wherever we are,
you're an
whether
activist
it's the
today.
Sweatpants or in the hair done or not, we're all activists today.
And love yourself today. You can do me that favor. Just give yourself a hug, love yourself, love your child.
And forgive yourself.
And forgive yourself for any mistakes. We're all making mistakes. Yep. We're all finding our way together.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us and for
Thank
being
you,
with
Shannon,
us
for letting me speak about this.
It's important. It's important that we share that. We're going to end the show now, but as we end this show, the conversation continues. Need to remind all of you that you can get a hold of us via email, and I'm in the wrong camera. You can get a hold of us via email, you can phone us, you can call us, watch us on Blip TV and other things. Give your kiddos a hug from me.
Bye. That's all I have to say now.